The lamps are still burning when I finally open my eyes. A thin ribbon of smoke curls against the ceiling, carrying that faint, sweet smell that clings to every room in this house. It's quiet, the kind of silence that feels padded, softened, blurred around the edges. My palms are warm, my heart beats slow. I can still taste the bitter ghost of last night's remedy on my tongue, the one the doctor insists will help with nerves, sleeplessness, and all the tiny troubles women aren't supposed to mention aloud. Because in Victorian England, the most dangerous addictions didn't hide in opium dens or dark alleys. They hid in parlors, in sewing baskets, in polished cabinets lined with bottles labeled soothing, restorative, for delicate constitution. And behind every cork and crystal stopper was a truth no one dared to say aloud, that countless housewives drifted through their days, wrapped in a haze of narcotics, a quiet epidemic that touched nearly every street, every social class, every home lit by gaslight. Subscribe and stay with me. The truths behind these quiet addictions run deeper than any perfume bottle on a lace-covered dresser. There are still rooms to open, still voices hidden behind velvet curtains. Tell me, where are you listening from tonight? The past is never as distant as it seems. You wake before the house does. The quiet is thick, the kind that seems to settle on your skin before you fully open your eyes. A pale wash of morning light presses through the lace curtains, turning the dust in the air into drifting flecks of gold. You blink, slowly, as though your eyelids are weighted. The cold of the room touches your arms first, a polite reminder that the fire died hours ago, but beneath the chill is a warmth you cannot quite name. A lingering sweetness, faint but familiar, hangs in the air like a memory you didn't ask to keep. Your head feels heavy, cushioned, wrapped in something softer than time, sleep. The pillow beneath you carries the faint perfume of last night's dose, a whisper of laudanum caught in the fibers, the kind that only you notice because it lives in your breath now. You exhale, and the scent drifts upward, golden and sickly sweet, clinging to the quiet like a secret you haven't decided whether to keep or to run from. The house waits with you. The clock in the hallway ticks in long, syrupy beats, slower than it should be. Its rhythm used to comfort you. Now it only reminds you of mornings when you woke easily, when your limbs didn't feel like damp cloth, when the world didn't move as though through fog. You stretch your fingers across the blanket, feeling the tiny tremor beneath the movement, the familiar flutter under your skin that tells you the remedy's hold is thinning. Somewhere downstairs, the kettle clicks as it cools from last night. You meant to empty it. You meant to tidy the parlor. You meant to finish mending the hem of your husband's coat. But thoughts drifted away from you the moment the tincture warmed your throat, and you lost the thread of everything else. You try to remember what the doctor said the first time he handed you the bottle, something about exhaustion, nerves, the strain of running a house that never stops breathing. Just a teaspoon before bed, he said, like a lullaby that comes bottled and safe. But it isn't safe, is it? You turn your face toward the bedside table, though you already know what waits there. The bottle catches the morning light, amber glass glowing as though lit from within. The cork rests beside it, stained slightly at the edges. You told yourself last night that you wouldn't reach for it again in the morning, that today would be different, that you would wake clear-headed, refreshed, ready to step into the day without help. Your hand moves anyway. The tremor grows as you hover above the bottle, as though your own body is quietly pleading. You haven't swallowed a drop yet, but already your breath feels shorter, your thoughts thinner, the world too sharp in some places and too blurred in others. You don't want to need it. You don't want the warmth it promises or the quiet it brings. But the hour before the remedy is always the hardest, a landscape of fraying edges and soft panic. You close your fingers around the glass. The house seems to lean closer, and somewhere deep inside you, beneath the haze and the shame and the careful silence, a truth flickers like the last coal in a dying hearth. This hour is not the beginning of your day. It is the beginning of your dependence. You step onto the street, with the bottle still echoing in your palm. The morning has sharpened since you left the house. The air tastes of soot and damp stone, the kind of cold that slips through gloves and settles into your bones. Carriages rattle over uneven cobblestones, their wheels carving thin lines through puddles left from the night's rain. You draw your shawl closer, not because of the weather, but because the world feels far too bright. Every sound, every flicker, every passing face pressing against your senses, as though the day itself resents your wakefulness. You tell yourself you're just running errands, a bit of thread, fresh bread, perhaps a new ribbon for your daughter's hair. Anything but what truly pulls you down the street. You try to ignore the faint ache blooming behind your eyes, the heaviness settling beneath your ribs, the way your breath seems to come unevenly unless you force it into rhythm. Each step brings a soft throb in your temples, not pain, exactly, but a warning, a reminder. By the time you reach the lane of shops, the city has fully woken. Market women call across stalls, their voices rising like smoke from coal fires. Bakers sweep flour from their aprons, the smell of warm crust drifting into the street. Children chase one another past lampposts still wet with rain. And yet, through all of it, your gaze slides toward the one door painted a deep, reassuring green. The pharmacy. Its windows glow faintly amber from the lamps inside, their light catching glass bottles arranged in orderly rows, blues, greens, golds, all gleaming like jewels waiting to be chosen. You pause before the door, pressing a steadying hand against the frame. The wood is cool beneath your glove. Behind it lies the promise of silence, of calm, of that slow, unfurling warmth your body craves. You push the door open. A soft bell rings overhead, gentle enough to feel as though it apologizes for being heard. The air inside is different from the street, warmer, thick with the scent of spices, alcohol, and the faint sweetness of poppy. It clings to the walls, to the shelves, to the very breath of the man who steps forward to greet you, the chemist, with his tidy waistcoat and kind, unreadable eyes. You wonder how many women he sees like you each morning, wrapped in politeness and quiet desperation. "Another tincture, missus?" he begins, but you shake your head before he finishes, though the lie forms clumsily. "Not today," you say. "I'm only here for a restorative, something mild." He nods, as though he's heard the same request 100 times this week. Perhaps he has. He turns toward a shelf behind him, fingers tracing labels with practiced ease. Paregoric, camphorated opium, soothing syrup, drops for female agitation. Each bottle carries a different name, but they all speak the same language beneath the varnish. Relief, wrapped in poison. He selects one with a gold-etched stopper and sets it before you. The liquid inside shivers slightly in the light. You pretend not to notice how your pulse quickens at the sight of it. "A quarter teaspoon, no more," he reminds you gently. It has a tendency to comfort too well. You pay him with coins that feel too heavy for their size. Outside, the bell rings again as you leave, the door closing softly behind you, sealing in the warm air, letting you return to the chill. You tuck the bottle into your pocket, feeling its weight against your hip as you walk. The world seems softer already, though you haven't taken a drop. Sometimes, the remedy begins the moment you know it's near. You return home before the sun has fully climbed the sky, the walk having settled into your bones like a kind of ache. The house greets you with the same stillness you left behind, a quiet so complete it feels almost staged, as though the rooms have held their breath waiting for your return. You hang your shawl on its hook, fingers lingering on the fabric longer than necessary, trying to steady the flutter beneath your ribs. The floorboards creak softly as you move down the hallway, passing the parlor where yesterday's mending rests untouched on the armchair. The hem you meant to fix, the buttons you meant to reinforce, all waiting, patient and accusing. You pause there for a moment, letting your fingertips brush over the fabric before turning away. You cannot sit. Not yet. Not until the trembling inside you grows less sharp. Your steps draw you instead toward the small room where you keep your sewing, a narrow space with pale wallpaper and a single window that lets in light like a timid guest. The moment you open the drawer of your little oak cabinet, the scent of lavender sachets rises to meet you. Gentle, familiar, comforting in a way that reminds you of who you were before all of this began. But beneath that fragrance lies something else. Your hand slips into the drawer, brushing against spools of thread, tiny silver scissors, the smooth wooden handle of your thimble. Your fingers move with practiced instinct, parting the layers of ordinary tools until they find the velvet pouch. Soft, dark blue, its drawstring worn from countless tightenings and loosenings, it sits like an unnoticed ember among household things. You lift it carefully. The pouch has weight more than the sewing tools, less than guilt, exactly enough to make your pulse stir. You sit at the edge of the stool as though settling into a confession, the pouch resting in your lap. For a moment, you stare at it without opening it, tracing the faint sheen where your thumb has passed, again and again over the velvet. In this dim room, with the curtains half drawn, it looks almost elegant, innocent, even. You loosen the drawstring. Inside lies the small vial you bought before your husband ever noticed your nights of too deep sleep, long before the doctor's prescription, before the morning tremors, before the quiet need that wraps itself around your breath with every passing day. You lift the vial from the pouch. The glass is cool, almost cold, and the liquid inside sways in a slow, honeyed ripple. A fraction of an ounce, hardly anything, yet somehow it holds the power to steady entire hours of your day. Outside, a carriage passes, its wheels clicking against the stones like a distant heartbeat. You hold the vial up to the window, letting the thin winter light shine through it. The liquid glows a dull amber, like captured dusk. You wonder whether anyone else in your circle keeps a pouch like this hidden between thread and needles. You suspect they do. The truth, the one none of you dare speak, is that no home escapes, completely untouched. You close your hand around the vial. You don't open it, not yet, but just holding it slows your breathing, smoothing the rough edges of your thoughts. The trembling in your fingers softens, the frantic pulse at your throat eases, and for a moment, just a moment, you feel as though you've stepped into a world where nothing aches. The pouch waits in your lap, the drawer open, the morning still quiet enough to hear your own heartbeat, and you know, as surely as you know the stitches you've sewn 1,000 times, that this tiny vial is no longer a secret, not from yourself, not anymore. The hour grows late by the time you gather the courage to leave the sewing room. The vial has been returned to its velvet pouch, the drawstring pulled tight, the drawer closed with a soft wooden sigh that feels almost judgmental. You rest your palms against the smooth surface of the cabinet, letting the silence settle once more around you. But it isn't the quiet that presses hardest, it's the memory of the last time you sat across from the doctor, hands trembling no matter how tightly you clasped them. You remember the walk to his office clearly, the uneven pavement, the way your skirts brushed along the dusty street, the strange heaviness in your limbs as you approached the place where so many women sought help for ailments that never seemed to have names. You remember how cold the brass handle was, how it clicked beneath your touch, how the door opened into a room that smelled of varnished wood, tobacco, and something faintly medicinal, a scent that made your heart lift in hope and sink in dread all at once. The doctor's office had always felt like a confessional. The tall glass cabinets gleamed with rows of bottles you couldn't quite read from where you sat. Instruments rested in neat, almost reverent arrangements on polished trays, and behind the great oak desk sat the man himself, coat immaculate, spectacles glinting, expression unreadable, except for the slightest crease between his brows that never quite left him. He welcomed you with the same gentle tone he used for everyone, though his eyes were sharper than his voice, as though he saw more than you ever intended to reveal. "What troubles you today?" he asked. You told him about the sleepless nights, the nerves you couldn't calm, the heaviness that pressed behind your eyes each morning, the faint, fluttering panic that stirred when the daylight grew too bright or the rooms too quiet. You told him everything except the truth that each symptom whispered from the same bottle whose cork you pulled more often than you admitted. He listened, nodding slowly, the quill dancing across his ledger. When he finally looked up, his face softened into the expression he reserved for women too worn to hide their fear. "You are exhausted," he said. "Overworked. Sensitive. A woman of your station carries more strain than she ever acknowledges." His voice was calm, reassuring, carefully measured. Then he reached for the bottle. You remember the way it caught the lamplight as he turned it in his hands, its amber liquid shimmering like captured dusk. He set it gently onto the desk, sliding it toward you, as though offering a solution wrapped in glass. "A teaspoon at night," he murmured. "For your nerves. It is a common remedy, very mild, very safe. Laudanum has helped many women like you." You nodded, though something deep inside you twisted at the certainty with which he spoke. Safe, mild, words meant to soothe, not reveal. His pen scratched across a small slip of paper the prescription. You took it with a hand that felt less like your own and more like something moving by instinct. The paper trembled between your fingers. He noticed. "Don't worry," he said softly, though his gaze lingered on your shaking hand a moment too long. "Relief is close. Relief." You left the office clutching the bottle the way others clutched rosaries. The warmth it offered wrapped around your thoughts before you ever took the first dose. And when you finally tasted it that night, the burn, the sweetness, the slow descent into quiet, you understood why he prescribed it so effortlessly. You returned to the present with a slow breath, standing alone in your own room, the memory of that first night shimmering like a candle behind your eyes. That was the day the doctor gave you permission, and the day you unknowingly surrendered everything that followed. You move through the house with a slowness that feels almost ceremonial, as though each step is part of a ritual you did not choose but have learned by heart. The hallway creaks beneath your feet, carrying your weight and your weariness with equal reluctance. Outside, the morning sun has risen fully now, its light turning the curtains thin and translucent. But the rooms you pass through still feel dim, as if the house, like you, has learned to prefer its shadows. You pause at the nursery door. Even before your hand reaches the knob, you hear the faintest sound inside. Not crying, not stirring, nothing but a deep, unnatural quiet that has settled into the room like dust on a windowsill. You push the door open gently, afraid to disturb the fragile stillness. The cradle sits beneath the window, rocking ever so slightly from the draft that slips under the sill. The blankets are drawn up neatly, tucked the way you remember tucking them hours ago, and your child lies within, small, chest rising and falling in the slow, heavy rhythm that used to frighten you before you learned to trust it, or perhaps before you learned to accept it. You step closer, each footfall barely a whisper. In the cradle's shadowed hollow, your child's face is peaceful, too peaceful, the kind of calm that belongs not to sleep, but to something deeper. The lashes rest like soot against soft cheeks. The lips are parted just enough for breath to slip through. You reach out a hand, rest it lightly on the tiny chest, feeling the warm, syrup-thick rhythm of a heartbeat, slowed by more than dreams. Your eyes drift to the small bottle on the table beside the cradle. It stands alone, dark glass, plain label, cork pressed in tight. You know its weight, its scent, its promise. The soothing syrup, the chemist called it when he first handed it to you, wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. Completely harmless, he said. A blessing for restless infants, a godsend for weary mothers. A single drop on the tongue, he promised, and the child would sleep through the night. He had been right. You lift the bottle, turning it in your fingers. The residue rings the inside like a thin line of amber varnish. You remember the first time you used it, the way the crying stopped so quickly it startled you, how the silence flooded the room like warm water. You told yourself it was mercy, not dependency, that the baby slept so you could sleep, so the house could sleep. But sleep has grown heavier since then, longer, deeper, a kind of stillness that unsettles you no matter how tightly you wrap yourself in excuses. You brush your fingers across your child's cheek. The skin is warm, soft as morning light, but there is a slackness beneath it, a looseness in the jaw, a heaviness in the limbs. You feel it like a pinprick beneath your ribs. You tell yourself the syrup is only for difficult nights, only when the crying overwhelms you, only when the doctor says the child is colicky, or the weather too damp, or your nerves too frayed to soothe another breathless hour. Only until the word loses its meaning. Outside, a carriage rolls down the street, shaking the window pane with its passing. The world moves, as it always does, and yet, in this small room, time feels captured, held in the amber glow of the bottle in your hand. You set it down carefully. For a moment, you consider pouring it out, opening the window and letting the cold morning air sweep away the sweet, clinging smell of the syrup. But your child stirs faintly, a soft, fragile sound that claws at your heart, and you freeze. You know how easily the crying can unravel you. Your hand hovers over the bottle once more, trembling with the weight of habit, fear, and a longing for quiet that has become its own kind of hunger. The cradle creaks softly, and you know, though you do not say it aloud, that the tonic beside the cradle soothes more than the child. It soothes you. The clock strikes 3 with a slow, deliberate chime that echoes faintly through the parlor, settling among the lace-draped furniture like a polite visitor. Afternoon light softens the room, turning every dust mote into drifting gold. The table has already been set, teapot wrapped in a quilted cover, delicate biscuits arranged in a circle, porcelain cups waiting in the quiet way objects do when they've served generations of women before you. You smooth your dress, steadying your breath before opening the door. The tremor in your hand is faint now, softened by the morning's remedy, but you still feel its shadow lurking beneath your skin. You step into the room just as your friends arrive, 3 women, elegant, composed, wrapped in the faint perfume of rosewater and expectation. Their voices rise in gentle laughter that barely touches their eyes. You greet them warmly, though each smile feels slightly delayed, as though your thoughts must pass through a thin curtain before they reach your face. They don't seem to notice. Or perhaps noticing is something no one in your circle does anymore. The teapot releases a faint hiss when you lift it, steam curling upward like a beckoning finger. You pour carefully, watching the amber liquid spill into the cups with a warmth that feels almost sentient. Your friends watch too, their gazes lingering not on the tea itself, but on the tiny bottle half hidden behind the sugar bowl. You see the smallest flicker of recognition in their eyes, not alarm, not judgment, but a quiet understanding, a shared permission. Soothing drops? One of them asks lightly, as though inquiring about the weather. Just a little, you say, your voice steady though your heart gives a small, traitorous leap. For nerves, she nods. We all have nerves these days. You pass the cups around the table. The sugar tongs click gently against the porcelain. Teaspoons swirl. A soft clink punctuates the air, with each touch of cup, to be thief, saucer. The familiar ritual unfolds, yet underneath it lies a different rhythm, one unspoken, one woven with shared secrets and quiet dependencies. Your friend Margaret laughs too loudly at something trivial, her cheeks flushed with a warmth that has nothing to do with the fire in the hearth. She dabs her forehead with a lace handkerchief, fingers trembling, the smallest tell. Her eyes shine in a way you recognize the soft glaze you sometimes see in your own reflection before the effects settle into calm. Across from her, Eleanor holds her cup with both hands, not to warm them, but to steady them. She hasn't touched her biscuit. She's waiting for the tincture to settle, for her breath to stop fluttering like a trapped sparrow. The stories you exchange float lightly, complaints of restless children, of sleepless nights, of headaches that stretch into days. Each story is delivered with a half smile, each softened by the unspoken sentence beneath it. I took something to make this bearable. Someone coughs softly, the kind of cough that comes from dryness rather than illness. Another sighs in relief after a sip too long to be polite. The room warms by degrees, not from the fire, not from the tea, but from the familiar, spreading ease that drifts from cup to bloodstream, smoothing edges no one will name aloud. You feel it too, the gentle unfurling along your nerves, the way your shoulders loosen, the soft blur that steals into the corners of the room. The parlor seems to lean closer, lamps glowing a little brighter, voices growing velvety and slow. You take a small bite of a biscuit, though the taste barely reaches you. Your mind floats quietly, as though wrapped in warm water. None of you mention the vial. None of you need to. By the time the last cup is drained, the conversation melts into comfortable silence. You sit together in that sweetness, held by a ritual that once belonged to tea alone, now shared with the warm, invisible hand of the spiti remedy. Outside, the day continues briskly without you. Inside, the afternoon drifts, soft and warm, held gently between awareness and forgetfulness, and no one at the table remembers quite where the warmth began. Night arrives earlier than it should. The lamps hiss softly as you light them, their glow settling into the corners of the house like a tired breath. The quiet that follows the strike of the match is thick and padded, muffling the world outside until it feels as though nothing exists beyond your windowpanes. You move slowly through each room, smoothing blankets, checking shutters, adjusting the cradle's quilt motions your hands know, even when your mind drifts somewhere else entirely. By the time you reach your bedroom, the house feels coated in stillness. You close the door behind you, and the click of the latch sounds distant, as though you heard it underwater. You pause, letting the silence settle deeper. Then your eyes drift, inevitably, toward the bedside table. The bottle waits. It stands in the lamplight like a small, obedient servant, amber liquid catching the glow, label curling slightly at the edges. You told yourself you would try to sleep without it tonight. You told yourself the trembling might stop on its own, that the ache behind your eyes would loosen, that the restlessness in your chest might ease if you simply breathed deeply enough. But night has a way of magnifying everything you try to ignore. You sit on the edge of the bed, hands clasped tightly in your lap. The room feels too large, its shadows too soft, its silence too attentive. Somewhere downstairs, the clock ticks, though you hear it only faintly. Every sound seems wrapped in cotton. Every thought arrives as if carried from a great distance. You lie back slowly. At first, the darkness is comforting, warm, close, a blanket around your senses. But soon, the stillness begins to press. Your mind flickers like a candle in a draught. A breath catches in your throat. Your heartbeat begins a shallow, nervous rhythm, as though unsure whether to hurry or slow. You swallow, but your mouth feels dry, your pulse too loud, your thoughts too sharp at the edges. Sleep does not come. Instead, a kind of floating takes its place, not rest, but a restless drift that keeps you just below waking and just above dreaming. You close your eyes tighter, chasing stillness, but the shadows behind your eyelids shift in ways you can't quite explain. Faces flicker, walls bend. The room seems to tilt gently, though your body remains perfectly still. You open your eyes with a start. The ceiling feels too close now. The lamp glows with an intensity it did not have a moment ago, its light stretching long fingers across the walls. Your breath grows shallow. The trembling begins again, not in your hands now, but in your chest. You turn your head toward the bottle. A thought whispers, just enough to help. You reach for it without fully meaning to, fingers closing around the cool glass with a relief so immediate it startles you. You uncork it, the faint pop louder than it should be. The room seems to lean forward as though watching. One spoonful. The liquid slides over your tongue like warm honey. The bitterness arrives after, curling down your throat in a slow, deliberate trail. You swallow again, and the world exhales. It happens quickly. Your heartbeat steadies. The air grows softer. The lamp's glow smooths into a warm haze. The ceiling drifts upward again. The room settles into a gentle sway that feels almost like being carried. Then the drifting begins. Your thoughts stretch like threads pulled too thin. Your limbs grow weightless. The edges of your vision soften until shapes lose their meaning. You hear something, a faint whisper, a breath, a sound outside the door, but you cannot tell if it's real or just part of the warm fog wrapping around your mind. Sleep finally reaches you, but it is not a natural descent. It is a surrender. Morning will come, and you will not remember everything. Only flashes a shadow that moved too slowly, a dream that felt like a memory, a sound that may never have existed. You will wake with heaviness in your limbs, sweetness in the air. You will tell yourself it was nothing, but you will know, quietly, that the nights you can't explain always begin the same way. With the bottle whispering from the bedside table, your husband enters the house long after the lamps have burned low. His boots tap against the entryway floor with a tired heaviness, the kind that comes from a day full of ledgers, conversations, and the small, invisible burdens men carry without ever naming. He hangs his coat on the hook, sighs, rubs the back of his neck, then calls your name softly, not loud enough to wake the child, just enough to let the house know he is home. You hear him, but your body does not rise with the swiftness it once did. You sit at the vanity, brushing your hair with slow, languid strokes that lose their rhythm between thoughts. The mirror shows a face softened by the remnants of the remedy, eyes a little too glassy, cheeks too pale, a smile that wavers before it finds its shape. When he steps into the room, you lift your head. His eyes linger on you longer than usual. "You're awake," he says gently. It is not an accusation, but neither is it a simple observation. The words hover between you, thin as mist. You nod, setting the brush down carefully, though your fingers fumble as you place it beside the small bottle you forgot to hide. The moment your eyes flick toward it, his follow. He steps closer, the wooden floor groaning faintly beneath his weight. His gaze drifts from your face to the bottle and back, searching for something he isn't sure he wants to find. "You've been using it more, haven't you?" His voice tries to stay neutral, but worry slips through, soft, uninvited, unmistakable. Your breath catches. You want to deny it, to smooth the moment over with the small, practiced reassurances you've learned to give during afternoons with friends, mornings in chemist shops, long evenings where silence feels safer than truth. But tonight, the words do not come as easily. The room sways with a gentle insistence, and you find your hand resting on the vanity as though you need it to stay upright. "I just needed a little help sleeping," you murmur. "The nights have been long." He stands behind you, his reflection appearing in the mirror, tall, tired, eyes shadowed by the weight of seeing more than he knows how to say. He reaches out, fingers brushing a strand of hair from your cheek. The gesture is tender, but the line of his jaw tightens as he looks at the bottle again. "I worry," he admits quietly. "You seem far away. Sometimes far away." You feel the words like a touch against your ribs. He is right. Though neither of you says it aloud, you have been drifting through rooms, through days, through conversations you forget moments after they happen. He has noticed the small things, the way you lose track of time, the way your hands shake before breakfast, the way your laughter arrives a second too late. He lifts the bottle gently, turning it in his hand. The lamplight glints off the glass. You tense, waiting for him to scold, lecture, forbid to do all the things husbands are expected to do when their wives wander too close to a precipice. Instead, he sighs. "I don't want you to suffer," he says, "but I'm afraid this may be hurting more than it helps." He sets the bottle down with a care that feels more like sorrow than anger. His hand finds your shoulder, warm and steady. For a moment, you lean into the touch, letting the closeness anchor you. But beneath the comfort lies something sharper, the quiet, creeping fear that he is finally seeing what you've tried to hide. You close your eyes, but the room does not stop swaying. The warmth in your veins flickers. You open them again, meeting his reflection. He searches your face, hoping for reassurance. You give him the softest smile you can manage, because he is right, because he is late, because you are already drifting, and he cannot reach you from where you are beginning to float. The next morning arrives with a dull, aching quiet, heavier than the one before. You pull yourself from the bed in slow, measured movements, as if your bones have thickened overnight. The room tilts gently with every step, though you pretend not to feel it. You make your way toward the parlor, the hem of your dressing gown whispering across the wooden floor. The house is still half asleep, the air cool with the softness of early light. You open the heavy velvet curtains to let in the morning. Light spills across the room, revealing the dust floating like pale insects in the air. Everything looks peaceful at first, the polished table, the floral upholstery, the neatly placed books lining the shelves. But as the sunlight stretches farther, it touches the cabinet in the corner. The cabinet you never open when anyone else is home. It stands tall and dark, carved with swirling vines and delicate leaves, a gift from your mother on your wedding day. She told you it was meant for keepsakes, family letters, important papers, heirlooms you wanted to protect. But over time, it became something else, a shelter, a sanctuary, a hiding place. You walk toward it with a quiet reluctance that feels like guilt. Each step softens your breath, tightens your throat, twists your stomach. The tremor in your fingers returns as you reach for the brass handle. You hesitate. The house seems to listen. Then you open it. The smell greets you first, the faint sweetness of opium, the sharper scent of alcohol, the dust of old wood. Inside, the shelves are not filled with letters or keepsakes, but bottles. Tall ones, short ones, amber and green, lined in rows like soldiers awaiting orders. Some are nearly empty, others unopened. Each carries a label in careful script: tincture of opium, paregoric, soothing cordial, laudanum for rest, drops for female complaint. You stare at them with a kind of quiet horror, though you're not sure whether the horror belongs to the number of bottles or to the familiarity of them. You touch one lightly, running your finger over the shape of the glass. Its surface is cool, smooth, almost comforting, a comfort you never meant to need. You pick up a bottle, not the newest, not the oldest, but one whose weight feels perfectly balanced in your hand. The amber liquid swirls inside, thick and slow. You remember the afternoon you bought it, the chemist who didn't ask questions, the way you tucked it into your pocket like a secret meant only for the fabric of your dress. And now here they all are, lined up in neat rows, forgotten, but never truly forgotten. A soft gasp escapes you as you realize how many you've kept. You try to count them, but halfway through your eyes blur, your breath tightens, and the numbers slip away. 10? 15? More? Time folds strangely around these shelves, each bottle representing a night you couldn't explain, a morning you drifted through, an afternoon tea warmed by, something sweeter than sugar. You close the cabinet door abruptly, pressing your back against it. Your heartbeat flutters against your ribs like a trapped bird. You tell yourself you'll throw them away, that you'll pour them down the drain, smash them in the garden, do anything but keep them. But you don't. You stand there, breath trembling, palms pressed flat against the wood, unable to step away, because the truth settles into you with a cold clarity. You are terrified of the bottles, and more terrified to be without them. The day begins with an unease you cannot name. Something feels off the moment you open your eyes, not the usual heaviness, not the familiar fog, but a sharper sensation beneath the ribs, a tightening, a quiet panic that grows before you even swing your legs out of bed. The light creeping across the floor feels too pale, too thin. The air tastes dry, as though the whole room has been stripped of something you've grown accustomed to breathing. You reach automatically for the bedside table. Your hand lands on wood, not on glass. You blink hard, as if your vision might be tricking you. You pat the tabletop again, slower this time, feeling only the grain of the varnish beneath your fingertips. You sit up, heart lodging itself somewhere uncomfortably high in your chest. The bottle, the one you always set in the same place, is gone. You check the floor, the drawer, the space beneath the bed. Nothing. Your breath quickens, a thin, uneven rhythm. You try to steady it, pressing a hand to your chest, but the panic has already taken root. You stumble from the room, crossing the hallway with a clumsy urgency you haven't felt in years. Your dressing gown snags on the banister as you descend the stairs, but you barely notice. The parlor is silent, the kitchen empty, the cabinet in the corner still closed. You pull it open with trembling fingers. Rows of bottles stare back at you, dozens of them, but your eyes land immediately on the space between two larger ones. A small, unmistakable gap. The bottle you used last night is not there. You swallow hard. The house creaks with the shifting of morning light. But it feels like something else, a whisper of warning. A reminder that the day has already taken a shape you did not choose. You check the shelves again, twice, 3 times, as though the bottle might reveal itself, if only you stare hard enough. But the gap remains, empty and accusing, and your breath becomes a trembling thing you can barely control. You close the cabinet slowly. Your hands shake, not softly, not subtly, but with a violence that startles you. Your fingers curl inward, as though gripping something that is no longer there. You steady yourself against the wall, swallowing against the dryness in your throat. The room begins to pulse, faintly a slow, rhythmic throb behind your eyes. The hours stretch. You try to busy yourself folding laundry, boiling water for tea, dusting the mantel, but nothing holds your attention for more than a moment. Your thoughts scatter. Your skin crawls with a restless heat. You sit, you stand, you walk, you pace. The world moves strangely, edges too sharp, colors too dim. By midday, the trembling has spread to your jaw. By afternoon, your breath comes in thin, quick bursts. By early evening, you can no longer pretend you aren't unraveling. A sound escapes you, something between a sob and a gasp, as you grip the arm of a chair to steady yourself. Your vision blurs at the edges, the walls tilting just slightly, enough to make the room feel unmoored. The parlor clock ticks loudly, each second pounding like a nail. You sink to your knees, trying to gather yourself, but every breath feels wrong. Every thought frays before it can form. Your body cries out in a language you never meant to learn, the language of absence, of craving, of dependency laid bare. Only then, in the depth of that shaking, breathless hour, do you understand the terrible truth. You didn't run out of the remedy ran out of you. And the day it left is the day your world began to fall apart. The tremors begin before dawn. Small at first, a quiver in your fingertips, a twitch along the inside of your arm, barely noticeable unless you look directly at them. But once you see them, you cannot unsee them. They move beneath your skin like a whisper trying to escape. Each shiver a reminder of something you have tried so long to pretend wasn't there. You sit at the kitchen table, elbows pressed against the cool wood, hands folded as tightly as you can manage. The room is dim, lit only by the faint, bluish light seeping in through the window. The kettle simmers quietly on the stove, though you're not sure how long it's been heating. Time feels muddled, stretched thin. Your thoughts drift in fragments, slipping between moments like water leaking through a cracked cup. You flex your fingers slowly, watching them tremble again. Just a little, but enough. The house is silent. Your husband hasn't come down the stairs yet. The child still sleeps. Even the street beyond, your window seems hushed, as if the world itself senses that your morning is built on unsteady ground. You reach for your teacup, but the porcelain clatters against the saucer before you even lift it. The sharp sound slices through the quiet, and you freeze, breath caught in your throat. You try again, using both hands this time. The cup lifts shaky, unsteady, and you bring it to your lips, spilling only a few drops. They burn your skin, but you hardly feel it. The heat in your chest is more overwhelming, a tight, desperate pressure that makes it difficult to swallow. You set the cup down, Your thoughts circle the missing bottle, its absence a shadow that clings to every corner of the room. You search the cabinet again, though you know it isn't there. You open the drawers, check the mantel, return to the cupboard, as though it might appear simply because you need it badly enough. It does not. Your hands shake harder. You close your eyes, pressing your palms into your temples, trying to steady your breath. But the trembling isn't just in your fingers anymore. It moves through your arms, into your shoulders, down your torso in ripples you cannot contain. Your breath shudders. Your jaw clenches. Your legs feel hollow, as though they might give out if you stand. The tremors are not only physical, they move through your mind, two little jolts of fear, flashes of irritation that flare and vanish, waves of sadness that arrive without reason. You grip the table, knuckles pale, whispering to yourself that it will pass, that this is only temporary, that you've gone a morning without it before. But never like this. A floorboard creaks behind you. You stiffen, trying to steady yourself before turning. Your husband stands in the doorway, hair still tousled, eyes heavy with sleep. His gaze travels to your hands, your trembling hands, and the quiet concern in his expression deepens into something sharper. "Are you well?" he asks softly. You try to nod. You try to smile, but your hands betray you. They tremble so violently the teacup rattles again, and the sound seems to echo through the entire house. Your breath falters, your vision blurs. A sob rises uninvited, catching in your throat before you can swallow it back down. Your husband steps forward. He reaches toward you, hesitates, then takes your shaking hands gently in his own warm, steady grounding. For the first time, you see fear in his eyes. Not anger, not disappointment, but fear. Fear of what he has only half understood until now. Fear of what you have been hiding not just from him, but from yourself. "I'm here," he whispers. "Tell me what you need." The answer sits heavy on your tongue, wrapped in shame, because the truth is simple, terrifying, undeniable. You need what you no longer have, and the tremors, the ones no one ever discussed, the ones hidden behind polite smiles and quiet houses, are only the beginning. The house is no longer simply quiet, it is cautious. A fragile stillness rests over every hallway, every carpeted step, every corner where light hesitates before settling. And the children, who once ran freely through these rooms with the loud, careless joy of youth, have learned to move with a different kind of instinct now. They have learned to tiptoe. The morning light spills across the upstairs landing as your daughter stands with her small hand hovering over the banister, listening. She tilts her head gently, her braid brushing her shoulder as she tries to hear whether you've risen yet. Not because she wants to wake you, but because she must know what version of you will greet the day. She descends the staircase one step at a time, her feet finding the spots that creak, the least places she discovered, not by instruction, but by necessity. When she reaches the bottom, she pauses outside the kitchen door, breathing quietly, courage gathering in her chest, like a small, nervous bird. Inside, you sit at the table again, fingers trembling against the teacup you haven't lifted. The tremors are worse this morning, spreading through you like cold water. You don't notice her standing there at first. You don't notice much at all except the ache beneath your ribs and the strange hollowness in your chest. Your daughter steps inside. "Mother?" Her voice is soft, hesitant, a whisper, more than a greeting. You turn your head too quickly, and she flinches before she can stop herself. Not because she fears you, but because she fears the sharpness that sometimes appears in your eyes on mornings like this, the sharpness that has nothing to do with anger and everything to do with the remedy's absence. You force a smile, though your lips feel numb. "Good morning, love." She approaches slowly, her slippers silent against the floor. She watches you with the quiet observational skill of a child who has learned far too early how to read the shifting weather inside a parent's face. She sees it before you speak, the slight twitch in your jaw, the way your shoulders curl inward, the tremor in your hands that you try to hide beneath the table. "Shall I make the tea?" she asks gently. You blink, surprised by the offer, then nod. She moves around the kitchen with small, deliberate motions. Her hands are steady as she fills the kettle, steady as she places the cups, steady as she pours the water. Children learn what steadiness is needed, and when she sets the cup before you, and you see her eyes flick just once to the cabinet door in the parlor, the one with the hidden bottles. She looks away quickly, pretending she saw nothing, pretending she doesn't understand. But children understand more than parents ever intend them to. Your son joins a moment later, rubbing sleep from his eyes. He pauses when he sees you, the way your fingers curl against the table, the way your breath stutters. He doesn't speak. He sits, quietly, too quietly for a boy his age. They have both learned silence on mornings like this. They have learned not to run, not to shout, not to tug at your sleeves. They have learned to watch you without letting you see that they are watching. They have learned to tiptoe around the shadows you carry. A drop of tea spills onto your hand as you lift the cup, and your daughter rushes forward with a cloth, wiping it away before you can react. Her movements are gentle, careful, the kind of carefulness a child should never need around her own mother. You murmur your thanks. She nods, though her eyes remain troubled, wide, and too old. Your children finish their breakfast silently, glancing at you between bites. You offer another smile, but it doesn't reach your eyes. The tremors continue beneath your sleeves, betraying every reassurance you try to give. Long after they've gone outside to play, the echo of their quiet footsteps lingers in the hallway, a soft, heartbreaking rhythm. Because a house touched by dependency teaches its children to walk lightly, and they have learned the lesson well. The afternoon light is thin today, a pale, hesitant glow that slips through the window, as though afraid to linger too long. You stand beside the glass, fingertips resting against the cool pane, watching the fog outside press itself against the street. The world beyond is blurred, softened into watercolor shapes. A lamppost, a passing carriage, the shadow of a neighbor's bonnet drifting through the mist. You breathe out slowly. For a moment, your breath fogs the glass, a fleeting cloud, gone almost as soon as it appears. But another vapor lingers in the air behind you, one far sweeter, heavier, and far more familiar. It curls around your senses like a ribbon drifting through warm water. Even before you turn, you know the scent well enough to feel it settle at the base of your throat. The bottle lies open on the table. A few drops cling to the rim, the residue glistening in the fading light. You hadn't meant to take any this afternoon. You told yourself that morning's dose was enough, that you would make it through at least until evening. But the tremors had crept back beneath your skin, thin, insistent shivers that no amount of tea or stillness could soothe. So you reached for the remedy, just enough to quiet the shaking, just enough to steady the air around you, just enough to make the world feel less sharp, less loud, less overwhelming. Now the room exhales with you. You press your hand to the window, feeling the faint chill seep into your palm. It anchors you, if only slightly. The warmth spreading through your veins blurs the edges of the parlor, softens the colors, slows the ticking of the distant clock, draws a thin veil over everything you see. Even the fog outside seems to move in a slower, gentler rhythm. You know this feeling well. It is the moment after the dose, the quiet descent, the calm rush, the settling haze that drifts into your thoughts like a lullaby you can't help but answer. Your heartbeat steadies. Your breathing loosens. The tension behind your eyes dissolves into a warm, amber glow. You lean your forehead against the glass. Outside, a gust of wind rattles the branches of the elm tree, sending a flurry of leaves skittering across the street. Inside, the air remains still, thick with the scent of opium and something softer, something almost like surrender. You close your eyes. In the darkness behind your eyelids, colors swell and shift. A door opens in a hallway you've never walked. A voice hums a tune you don't quite recognize. Shadows breathe in slow, rhythmic pulses. You feel yourself drifting, not asleep, not awake, but somewhere in the space between. a place where worries cannot quite follow, where time loses its grip, where the tremors fade into memory. A knock at the front door startles you. Your eyes snap open. The vapor clings stubbornly, refusing to clear as quickly as your thoughts try to. You straighten, smoothing your dress with trembling hands. The world tilts slightly, not dangerously, but noticeably, as you steady yourself against the windowsill. The knock comes again. A neighbor, perhaps. A friend. A caller with a basket of scones or a bit of gossip or a request for tea. Someone unaware of the fog behind your eyes or the trembling in your fingers. You hesitate. The remedy still warms your bloodstream. The room still sways. And for the briefest moment, you consider not answering, letting the world knock and knock while you remain tucked inside your quiet haze. But the bell rings, and you know you must move. You take a breath, push yourself away from the window, and walk slowly toward the door, the vapor still drifting behind you like a pale, sweet shadow that refuses to be left behind. She arrives just after dusk, her silhouette framed in the doorway like a memory refusing to fade. You recognize her instantly, Mrs. Harrow, the widow from 3 houses down, though she stands differently now. Straighter, too still, her posture brittle as dried reeds. She clutches a shawl around her thin shoulders, knuckles pale against the woven wool. Her eyes, once bright with a sharp humor you used to admire, seem darkened at the edges, as though shadow has settled into them and made a home. You step aside to let her in. She moves slowly, not like a woman her age, but like someone carrying an invisible weight that drags behind her with every step. Her boots make the faintest sound on the carpet, careful, measured, timid, the footsteps of someone who has learned to fear silence, but fears noise even more. "Thank you," she murmurs, voice barely more than a breath. You guide her into the parlor, lighting another lamp as the room dims with the falling night. The flame flickers weakly, its glow settling around her face in soft, trembling halos. She removes her shawl with hands that tremble not delicately, but violently, as though each finger moves without her permission. You pretend not to notice. She sits on the edge of the sofa, spine rigid, hands folded tightly in her lap. For a long moment, she says nothing, only breathes. Shallow, uneven breaths that rattle faintly in her throat. Her gaze wanders toward the window, then toward the cabinet, then down to the floor, as if searching for a place to rest without collapsing. "How long has it been?" you ask gently. She blinks, swallowing hard. 3 months, she whispers. "Since he passed." She pauses. "Since everything passed." You nod. You understand more than you wish you did. She reaches into her pocket, a slow, trembling movement, and pulls out a small, empty bottle. The label is worn nearly smooth, the cork missing entirely. She sets it on the table between you, her fingers lingering on the glass, as though touching it grounds her more than the room itself. "I didn't mean to," she says, voice cracking like thin ice. "At first it was just to help me sleep. The house was too quiet, the bed too large. I couldn't bear the sound of my own thoughts." She inhales shakily, but the nights kept coming, and the quiet kept growing. And one night, her hands clench. I woke, and the bottle was empty. You've seen grief before. You've carried enough of your own to recognize its shape, its weight, its slow, suffocating drip. But what sits before you now is something else, grief tangled with dependency, mourning knotted with desperation, a hollowing from the inside out. "I tried to stop," she whispers. "I told myself it was only for sorrow, only until the worst of it passed." Her voice thins further, but now the sorrow has dulled, and the need hasn't. Outside, the wind murmurs along the window, brushing cold, fingers against the glass. Inside, the warmth of the lamps trembles, casting shadows that flicker like ghosts across the walls. "Do you have some?" she asks, without looking up. The question is fragile, brittle, more plea than words. You feel your breath catch. You understand exactly what she's asking, and exactly what it would mean to answer. "I'm trying to stop." You manage. She closes her eyes, and tears slip silently down her cheeks, slow, reluctant pearls tracing the years carved into her skin. For a moment she folds into herself, shoulders trembling, breath hitching in small, desperate bursts. You reach out and take her hand, and her fingers clutch yours with a strength that surprises you. "I don't want to be like this," she sobs. "I just want the quiet to end." You hold her hand until the tears slow, until her breathing steadies, until the trembling softens into exhaustion. And in her grief, her shaking, her desperate search for something to silence the ache, you see your own reflection not in the mirror, but in her eyes. When she finally leaves, the empty bottle remains on your table, a warning, a confession, a mirror you cannot look away from. And as the door closes behind her, you feel the room grow heavier, as if the shadow she carries has slipped inside and settled beside your own. The next morning, you step into the street wrapped in a shawl that does little to protect you from the cold. The air tastes of coal smoke and damp stone, the familiar scent of a city waking under grey skies. Carriages rattle past in uneven rhythms, splashing through puddles left from the night's rain. Vendors shout half-hearted greetings from beneath awnings, their voices rising like smoke into the fog. You walk with purpose, though your breath catches with every step. The tremors haven't left you fully. They linger beneath your skin like a second heartbeat, quick and restless. You press your palm against your side as though you can steady yourself by sheer will, but the shaking continues, subtle, insistent, impossible to ignore. The market unfolds before you, stalls lined with baskets of apples, jars of honey, bolts of fabric, bundles of herbs tied with twine. Everything arranged neatly, invitingly, though the winter chill dulls the colors and sharpens the shadows. You move through the crowd with practiced ease, offering polite nods to merchants who know you by sight, but not by truth. You see her before she sees you, the woman with the bonnet trimmed in faded lace, standing near the herb stall. Her eyes dart nervously, scanning the crowd. She holds a small basket filled with ordinary things, bread, a bit of cheese, a spool of thread, but her fingers tap against the handle in restless rhythm. You recognize the rhythm. You recognize the look. When she finally notices you, her expression flickers with something like relief and something like shame. You do not speak. Not yet. Instead, you follow the narrow path between stalls until you reach the far end of the market, where a strip of canvas shades a table cluttered with bottles wrapped in brown paper. Each bottle is the same size, each tied with the same piece of string, each unlabeled. The man behind the stall is not a chemist. He does not wear a waistcoat or spectacles, nor does he greet you with the practiced civility of a shopkeeper. He looks instead like someone who prefers not to be remembered, a thin man with hollow cheeks and eyes that never stay in one place for long. You stand before him. He nods once. No words are exchanged. He reaches for one of the bottles, sliding it toward you with casual precision. You hesitate not because you intend to refuse it, but because hesitation has become its own ritual, a formality you cling to before the inevitable. Your hand trembles as you pick it up. The brown paper is warm where the bottle has been sitting in the weak sunlight. The string bites faintly into your fingers. Inside the glass, liquid sloshes gently, dark, sweet, familiar. You tell yourself you need it only to get through today, only until the tremors stop, only until you feel whole again. 2 shillings, the man murmurs. His voice is rough, low. You hand him the coins quickly, embarrassed by how desperately your fingers clutch the bottle once the exchange is done. As you turn to leave, you notice the woman with the lace-trimmed bonnet behind you. She avoids your gaze, eyes fixed on her shoes, but her hands reach forward with a trembling urgency of their own. Another bottle slides across the table. Another pair of coins changes hands. Another silence shared. You realize then that the market is full of women like you, moving quietly, nervously, through aisles of produce and fabrics, each hoping no one notices the small paper-wrapped bottles hidden beneath bread and sewing supplies. Each convinced her secret is hers alone. You clutch the bottle tighter beneath your shawl as you walk home. The street seems narrower now, the fog thicker, the silence heavier, and though the bottle warms your palm, it leaves a coldness in your chest that no remedy, no matter how sweet, can erase. Sleep abandons you long before the household quiets. Evening settles over the city in a slow grey shroud, but your body refuses the softness of it. The lamps burn low, their flames leaning and trembling as though mirroring the restlessness threading through your veins. You lie beneath the covers, fully awake, eyes open to the dark, listening to every sound the house dares to make. A floorboard shifting, a distant carriage, the soft sigh of wind pressing against the window. Each sound feels magnified, stretched thin across your nerves, until even silence becomes unbearable. You turn on your side, then your back, then your other side. The sheets twist around your legs like vines, and heat gathers beneath the blankets, though the room is cold. You tell yourself it is only a difficult night. Everyone has them. It will pass. But your breath grows shallow, your heartbeat quickens, and the tremors begin again. They start in your hands, subtle at first, a delicate, almost invisible flutter beneath the skin. But as the minutes stretch into an hour, the trembling climbs your arms, tightening your shoulders, creeping into your jaw until your teeth press together without your meaning them to. You press your palms flat against the mattress, willing the shaking to stop. It does not. Your mind refuses rest. Thoughts scatter wildly, slipping away before you can name them, replaced by others that vanish just as quickly. You feel trapped inside your own body, restless, aching, unable to settle, unable to escape the frantic energy thrumming through you. You rise from the bed, the room tilts slightly when your feet touch the floor. A faint dizziness sweeps through you, the kind that feels as though the entire house is breathing unevenly. You grip the edge of the vanity until your vision steadies, then move slowly toward the door. The hallway is cold. You descend the stairs in careful steps, hand trailing along the banister. The lamp in the parlor casts a dim glow, flickering as though the flame is unsure whether it belongs to this hour at all. The shadows stretch long across the carpet, shivering gently with the movement of the light. You stand in the doorway of the parlor, staring at the cabinet, the one with the bottles. Your breath catches not because you mean to open it, not because you've decided anything, but because the instinct is there, sharp and immediate. A pull you cannot ignore. Your fingers twitch at your sides, your pulse throbs behind your eyes. You take a step forward, then another, then you stop. You press both hands to your mouth, squeezing your eyes shut until tears threaten to rise. You taste bitterness at the back of your throat, not from the remedy, but from the absence of it. You sink onto the sofa, pressing your palms against your temples, trying to quiet the frantic rhythm inside your chest. Minutes pass, or hours, you cannot tell. Your breath hitches in shallow bursts, and you rock slightly in place without realizing you're doing it. The shaking intensifies, rolling through your arms, your legs, your spine. A cold sweat beads at the base of your neck. You whisper into the silence, as though someone might hear, "Please, just let me sleep." But the house offers no comfort. The clock ticks, the shadows shift, your hands tremble in your lap, and night stretches on, long, merciless, endless, refusing to release you from its grip. By dawn, your body is exhausted, but your mind is still awake, buzzing faintly like an overwound clock. You sit beside the window, watching the first pale light seep into the fog outside. You have survived the night without the remedy, but not without cost. And as morning finally arrives, a painful truth settles into your bones. It isn't the remedy you dread, it's the nights without it. By mid-morning, the house is bright, but you feel as though you are walking through dimness. Light pours across the carpets and glints off brass fixtures, yet everything seems muted, wrapped in a veil only you can see. You move through the parlor slowly, straightening cushions, smoothing tablecloths, adjusting flowers in vases, tasks you once performed with ease, Now done, with trembling hands and a foggy mind that drifts between thoughts like a lantern swaying in a draught. The city beyond your windows hums with its usual vigor. Delivery carts rattle down the street. Ladies chatter near the grocer's. A distant church bell tolls the hour. Life moves briskly, confidently, without pause. But inside your home, inside you, something moves at a different pace. A crawl rather than a stride. A descent rather than a simple tiring. You pause at the mirror in the hallway. The glass reflects a woman you half recognize, face paler than usual, eyes slightly sunken, hair smoothed neatly, but lacking its usual shine. You stare for a long moment, as though hoping your reflection might blink first, admitting the truth on your behalf. But the woman in the mirror only looks back with quiet resignation. You force yourself to turn away. There is laundry to fold, letters to sort, a roast to prepare for supper. But each task feels strangely distant, as though your hands are performing functions your mind no longer inhabits. You catch yourself misplacing items, a spoon left in the pantry, a bonnet tucked absent-mindedly into a drawer of linens, and each mistake presses another layer of shame into your chest. Respectable women do not lose track of their thoughts. Respectable women do not tremble as they knead dough or pause in doorways, trying to remember why they entered the room at all. Respectable women do not slide bottles into hidden cabinets. You remind yourself of this as you work, but the reminders only sharpen the ache behind your ribs. By noon, a chill has settled into your limbs. You fetch a shawl, but even wrapped in wool, the cold persists, an internal frost that the fire in the hearth cannot thaw. You sit before the flames, watching them rise and fall in gentle, hypnotic waves. The warmth touches your skin, but not your bones. Your thoughts drift again, to the afternoon teas with friends who perform the same polished smiles you do, to the chemist's careful hands, to the empty bottle in the waste bin, to the tremors that start and stop like an unpredictable tide. You wonder how many households on your street harbor similar shadows, how many mothers and widows and wives sit in respectable rooms with respectable furniture, containing unrespectable secrets wrapped neatly beneath lace and civility. The descent is silent. It does not announce itself with drama, nor scandal, nor loud collapse. It slips into your life quietly, one restless night, one trembling morning, one harmless bottle at a time. It curls into corners of your routines, reshapes your habits, rewires your breath. It wears your respectability as camouflage. By late afternoon, you hear the clatter of children playing in the street, their laughter bright and sharp through the open window. For a moment, the sound pierces through the fog, reminding you of days when your mind felt clearer, when your hands were steady, when nights were simply nights, not battles. But the moment fades. You close the window, shutting out the laughter, shutting in the quiet. You sit again, hands folded, spine straight, expression composed, the portrait of a proper woman in a proper home. And beneath that portrait, deeper and deeper, the descent continues. The laundress arrives just after midday, carrying her wicker basket in both arms, hips swaying with the practiced rhythm of someone who has spent a lifetime moving between houses that are not her own. Her boots tap lightly on the front step before you hear the polite knock, two short taps, and one soft one, the way she always announces herself. You take a steadying breath before opening the door. Mrs. Tilworthy stands there, face ruddy from the cold, stray wisps of grey hair clinging to her temples. She offers you a polite, reserved smile, the kind a woman of her station gives out of habit, not warmth. But her eyes flick briefly over your shoulder, as if confirming that the house is as quiet today as it was the last time she visited. "Good afternoon, ma'am," she says, adjusting her grip on the basket. "Here for the linens." You nod, stepping aside to let her in. She walks with a confidence that never crosses into disrespect, but still, she sees everything. Servants always do. They move through rooms as silent witnesses, gathering truths from the dust they sweep and the sheets they fold. You lead her to the laundry room, your breath shallow, your palms damp. The morning tremors have eased, but the fog has not. You move with deliberate care, trying to keep your hands still as you gather soiled linens into a neat pile. Mrs. Tilworthy watches you, not openly, not rudely, but with the subtle, assessing gaze of a woman who has observed far more than she has ever spoken aloud. She notices the stiffness in your movements, the faint smudge beneath your eyes, the way your fingers curl and uncurl as though searching for something they cannot find. "You're looking peaked today, ma'am," she says quietly. The words land softly, but they cut deeper than expected. You force a small smile. "I'm simply tired," you reply. Nothing more. She doesn't challenge you. Instead, she reaches for the sheets, folding them with swift, practiced movements. The room fills with the rustle of fabric, the faint scent of soap, and the muffled beating of your heart against your ribs. As she folds the last sheet, something slides out from its layers and lands on the floor with a soft thump. You freeze. The laundress pauses, glancing down. It is a small cloth pouch velvet, worn, unmistakable. Your breath catches, sharp and thin. Mrs. Tilworthy bends to pick it up. She examines it briefly before placing it on the table beside you. Her touch is gentle, deliberate, and far too knowing. You stare at the pouch, throat tightening. You open your mouth to speak, though you're not entirely sure what explanation you could possibly give for the weight of it, for its scent, for the tiny scratches near the drawstring from frantic hands opening and closing it in the dark. Before you can form a word, she speaks softly. "I've seen these before," she says, voice low enough that it feels like a secret, shared, not exposed. "In other homes." Your eyes snap to hers. She meets your gaze calmly, not judging, not pitying, but with a kind of weathered understanding. "Times are hard," she murmurs, "for all sorts of women." Her words settle between you like dust, heavy, honest, quiet. She gathers the folded linens into her basket, her movements steady and unhurried. Before she leaves, she rests a hand lightly on your arm, a gesture so small it might have gone unnoticed, if not for the warmth that blooms beneath it. "If you ever need help," she says. "Real help, not the bottled kind you only have to ask." Then she gathers her things, gives a small bow of her head, and steps out of the room. The door closes softly behind her. You remain standing beside the velvet pouch, staring at it as though it might open on its own and reveal the truth you keep pushing into the shadows, because someone else has seen it now. Someone who knows, and secrets, once witnessed, become harder to carry alone. You don't plan to return to the apothecary so soon. You tell yourself you can endure another day without the remedy, another morning of tremors, another night of restless drifting, another string of moments stitched together by sheer will. But as the hours pass, your resolve thins like worn fabric, fraying silently at the edges. By late afternoon, your hands will not steady, your breath will not deepen, your thoughts will not settle. So you find yourself walking. The sky above is a muted slate, clouds heavy with the promise of rain. The chill in the air wraps around your arms, nudging you forward with an urgency you try to suppress. Fog hangs low over the street, softening outlines of buildings and blurring lamplight into pale halos. The world feels distant, muffled, as though seen through a veil. When you push open the apothecary door, the small bell startles you with its brightness. The air inside is warm, too warm, thick with the mingling scents of herbs, alcohol, and something darker. Shelves line the walls, gleaming with polished bottles arranged like obedient soldiers awaiting command. The chemist looks up from his counter, his spectacles catching the lamplight. He knows you. Not by name, he never uses names, but by habit, by tremor, by the familiar fog in your eyes. His gaze lingers a moment too long before he nods in greeting. "What troubles you today?" he asks. It is a ridiculous question. You both know the answer. You murmur something vague about sleeplessness, headaches, an unsettled mind. He listens with the same professional gentleness he offers every woman who stands where you stand, each clinging to the semblance of respectability even as the mask slips. He turns, retrieves a bottle, Your hand twitches when he places it on the counter. But before he wraps it, before he ties the twine neatly around the brown paper, he does something unusual, something that unsettles you more than the tremors do. He opens a ledger, a thick book, bound in worn leather, pages yellow with age, ink stains like shadows crawling across the paper. He flips through it with practiced fingers, stopping at a page marked by a thin strip of cloth. Your breath tightens. You see your handwriting faint, trembling, unmistakable from signatures you hardly remember signing. Dates line the margin, 6 weeks of visits, then 8, then 12, each closer together than the last. And beside your name, others, names of women you know, women from your street, women from church, women who hosted teas and charity meetings and stitched quilts for the poor. Mrs. Harrow, Mrs. Whitcomb, Lady Anstruther, Miss Lay, Mrs. Devlin, an entire column of them, all written in the same careful hand, all beside the same prescriptions, all returning more often than their polite smiles ever admitted. Supply must be regulated, the chemist says softly, without looking up. The city has its concerns. Regulated, not stopped, never stopped. You stare at the ledger, at the quiet confession inked across its pages. An entire life of women, respectable, graceful, neatly gloved, reduced to entries in a book. Proof that your secret was never truly yours alone. The chemist closes the ledger gently. As usual? He asks. Your throat feels tight. You nod. He wraps the bottle, ties the string. You pay with trembling fingers, your pulse hammering beneath your skin. When you step back outside, the air feels heavier, colder, as though the fog itself has thickened around your shoulders. You clutch the bag under your shawl, not just from need, but from the terrifying knowledge that you are one name in a ledger full of women silently descending the same dark path. You do not mean to linger before the mirror. The hallway is narrow, dimly lit, its wallpaper fading into patterns you no longer see clearly. The lamp casts a faint glow, just enough to touch the edges of your reflection, but not enough to soften the truths it will reveal. You pause in front of it, fingers resting lightly against the wooden frame, as though your touch might steady both yourself and the image staring back. The reflection is yours, and yet it is not. The face is pale, almost waxen, as though the skin itself has been stretched too thin over tired bones. Your eyes, the same color, the same shape, glimmer faintly with a glassiness you have tried to ignore. A shadow rests beneath them, darker than it should be, and it has nothing to do with light or the fading sun. The tremor that pulses beneath your hands shows in the tightness of your jaw, the quiver of your lips, the slight twitch of your brow. Every line, every crease, every small imperfection seems exaggerated, magnified by the lens of honesty the glass provides. You step closer. The closer you stand, the harder it becomes to look away. The lamp's glow reflects from the mirror and catches in the hollows of your cheeks, illuminating the hollowness inside you as much as the hollows of your face. You reach up to smooth a strand of hair against your temple, but your hand shakes. Even this small, simple gesture betrays you. You feel the pulse beneath your skin, a rhythm you have tried to dull, to hide, to temper with syrup and tincture and careful habits. But it rises, still relentless, insistent. You study the eyes, not the color, not the shape, but the story they hold. Fatigue that sleep cannot reach, anxiety that medication only partially quiets, a slow, persistent pull towards something you know is both refuge and prison. They hold the truth of mornings spent trembling before dawn, of afternoons walking carefully through streets lined with produce and fabrics, of evenings when the house itself seems to watch, waiting, silent, heavy with expectation. You look lower. The shoulders slump imperceptibly, a subtle, resigned bow to the weight you carry. Fingers flex, flex again, then rest loosely, almost helplessly, against the frame. Even in reflection, even in stillness, the tremor continues, a whisper of warning, a remnant of reliance, The thought presses into you. This is what you have become. Not exactly sick, not exactly broken, not entirely lost, but altered, shaped, defined by need you barely admit, even to yourself. The glass does not lie. It cannot. Every day, every drop, every stolen moment of quiet and warmth is recorded here in the lines of your face, the slack in your posture, the trembling of your hands. You turn your head slightly, glimpsing the small velvet pouch tucked discreetly under the table. Its presence calls to you, the amber liquid within promising that brief, deceptive solace. But the reflection in the mirror reminds you, as it always does, that the comfort comes at a cost, that every night soothed, every tremor stilled, every shadow softened has left its mark somewhere deeper than skin. You exhale slowly, letting the weight of your gaze slide from the glass back into your chest. The mirror does not forgive, it does not excuse, it only shows, and you cannot unsee what it tells you. The reflection remains, silent, still, unwavering, a witness to every quiet descent, every hidden dose, every carefully guarded secret. You step back, hands pressed lightly to your face, heart fluttering with both fear and recognition. You glance once more at the velvet pouch, then lower your gaze to the floor. The truth will not vanish. It will not be hidden. It waits, patient, quiet, insistent just beyond the lamp's warm glow. The doorbell rings faintly, a soft chime cutting through the parlor's heavy silence. You startle, fingers still trembling from the morning's routine, and press your palm against the table to steady yourself. The lamp flickers as you move toward the door, its glow stretching long shadows across the carpet. The house has grown quieter in these last weeks, each room holding its breath as though aware of the tension it shelters. You open the door to reveal two women, dressed in the familiar elegance of afternoon calls, gloves immaculate, skirts pressed, hats pinned carefully in place. Their faces are bright with politeness, but their eyes flicker with something else, a subtle awareness that chills the skin more effectively than winter's frost. They are here not just for conversation, but for confirmation, a silent measure of the truths no one ever says aloud. You step aside, allowing them to enter. The parlor absorbs them quietly, the cushions and curtains pressed into the ritual of welcoming. Their gloved hands carry small gifts, a tart wrapped in paper, a sprig of winter greenery, a folded letter sealed with wax. You place these carefully on the table, the tremor in your hands betraying the effort to maintain composure. Tea is prepared slowly, deliberately, the kettle's hiss and the gentle clink of spoons, the only sounds beyond soft voices. Conversation drifts lightly at first, the weather, the news, the events of the neighborhood. Yet, beneath every polite phrase, a subtle current runs, carrying with it recognition and acknowledgement. You feel it immediately, a tacit understanding that extends beyond words, a network of quiet knowledge shared among women who have learned the delicate art of concealment. They glance toward the cabinet where the bottles are kept, not openly, not accusatorily, but with the kind of knowledge born from repeated observation. You feel their awareness like a weight pressing gently against your shoulder. Your hands hover over the teacup, slightly trembling, and you remind yourself to breathe, slowly, steadily. The eldest of the visitors, Mrs. Whitmore, leans slightly forward, her voice lowered to a whisper, as though the walls themselves might overhear. "It must be difficult sometimes," she murmurs, eyes tracing your movements, balancing everything, keeping appearances. There is no judgment in her tone, only acknowledgement, a quiet sympathy tempered by shared experience. You nod, feeling the lump in your throat. You want to reply, to explain, to confess the tremors, the sleepless nights, the reliance on the amber liquid in the velvet pouch, but no words form. Instead, you manage a small, polite smile and take a sip of the tea. Its warmth spreads slowly through your chest, masking the sharper tremors beneath the surface. You feel both relief and shame, relief at the recognition, shame at the fact that none of you will name it aloud. The conversation continues in this muted rhythm. Laughter, careful and measured, rises and falls like a gentle tide, carrying beneath it the unspoken truths that bind you together. Each phrase, each glance, is an acknowledgement of the hidden, a silent contract that ensures nothing will be revealed beyond this room. And yet, the awareness lingers, the quiet pressure of all those afternoons, all those bottles, all those nights spent walking the tightrope of civility and dependence. When the visitors rise to leave, the door closes softly behind them, leaving you alone in the parlor once more. The teacups are empty. The room seems heavier, denser, filled with the lingering presence of their knowledge. You glance toward the cabinet, toward the velvet pouch tucked inside. Its amber liquid catches the lamplight faintly, as though aware that it has been witnessed, even if only partially, and you realize, with a shiver that travels down your spine, that some secrets are too heavy to ever be fully hidden. The afternoon sunlight slants through the kitchen window, glancing off the polished counter and scattering faint reflections across the floor. You sit at the small table, hands resting lightly on the surface, though the tremors still ripple beneath your skin like a secret pulse you cannot silence. Before you lies the recipe book, leather-bound, edges fraying from use. The pages smell faintly of dust and ink, but beneath that, a lingering sweetness, the invisible residue of past tonics, of remedies that promised comfort yet delivered dependence. You open the book carefully, as though the act itself could awaken some hidden consciousness within its pages. The first few recipes are familiar. Pastries, broths, preserves, they are mundane, ordinary, the safe routines of domesticity. But as your fingers move through the leaves, you pause. Here are the pages you have read 1,000 times, the sections marked with tiny annotations in delicate script, instructions for tinctures, syrups, and powders. Each one insists on precision, a teaspoon here, a few drops there, for delicate nerves, for restful nights, for the constitution of a gentlewoman. Words meant to comfort, words meant to conceal. You trace the ink with a fingertip, feeling the slight ridges and grooves, the faint indentations of your own hand from long ago. The recipes do not lie in intent, they do not speak deceitfully, but the effect is different. They are maps, guiding you through the hours, the tremors, the sleepless nights. They offer a route to quiet that is sweeter than silence and heavier than morality. You have followed these paths before, and each time you do, the house grows quieter, the shadows longer, the nights more mercilessly prolonged. You breathe slowly, trying to anchor yourself in the act of reading rather than the urge that rises like a tide inside your veins. The tremor in your hand intensifies despite the attempt at stillness, reminding you that the body remembers what the mind wishes to forget. You can feel the pulse of need, the quiet insistence that the amber liquid, the velvet pouch, the careful teaspoons could bring relief to the restless and the weary alike. Outside, the wind rattles the window pane, a faint staccato against the glass. You glance at the child's room, the cradle empty now, the faint scent of yesterday's syrup lingering in the air. You know the pattern, the recipes, the tonics, the carefully measured doses. They reach beyond mere ingredients, beyond the written instructions. They seep into the routine of the house, into the rhythm of each day, binding body and mind into dependency without ceremony or acknowledgement. You close the book with a slow, deliberate motion. The leather creaks faintly, the sound echoing in the quiet parlor like a soft sigh. Your hands hover above the surface, still trembling, and you realize that no amount of turning pages, no matter how careful, can alter the truth. The recipes themselves are innocent, but they enable a practice that is anything but. The day outside moves on, indifferent, unaware. You rise from the chair, legs heavy, breath uneven, and move toward the cabinet where the bottles are kept. The amber liquid sways faintly in the light, calling, patient, silent, inevitable. You take a slow step closer, and the tremor grows stronger, racing from your fingers into your chest, a reminder of the consequences written into the recipes themselves. The books do not lie, but neither do they forgive. The parlor door opens and closes with a muted click, a sound you've learned to associate with both relief and dread. The day stretches long, soft light pooling across the carpet, casting gentle shadows that seem to shift with a life of their own. You have spent the morning attending to tasks you cannot quite remember, folding laundry, dusting shelves, smoothing curtains, motions that feel automatic, necessary, and yet hollow. The quiet is broken only by the soft footfalls of visitors arriving, the occasional scrape of a chair, the faint rustle of skirts brushing the floor. The first call is polite, deliberate, perfumed. A neighbor, her gloves pristine, carrying a small bundle of bread wrapped in a linen napkin. She greets you with a practiced smile, eyes flicking just long enough to observe, never to comment. The conversation begins innocuously, the weather, the state of the street, the recent market day. You nod, sip tea, offer polite smiles. But beneath each word, beneath the layers of etiquette, there is a current of understanding, a recognition of the invisible burdens each woman carries, a soft acknowledgement of the remedies tucked away behind cupboards, behind curtains, behind polished appearances. The next visitor arrives moments later, her arrival overlapping the first, her presence tipping the room into a subtle chaos, carefully masked by conversation. Words blur as they pass from lips to ears, fragments of sentences caught mid-thought, sentences that begin with mundane topics and end in sighs, barely audible to any outsider. The teas blend together, cups clink, teaspoons stir, laughter rises and falls like a tide. You find yourself repeating phrases, nodding at points you cannot remember, your hands curling around the warm porcelain as though holding the room itself in place. By the third call, the parlor feels crowded, though only 6 women occupy it. Their faces are bright, composed, yet there is a shared hesitation beneath the elegance. They glance toward the cabinet now, ever so slightly, fingers brushing table edges, skirts swishing, eyes flicking toward bottles they do not name aloud. Each of them performs the same delicate dance-sharing conversation, concealing tremors, hiding knowledge as if the mere act of acknowledgement would shatter the fragile peace of their collective respectability. Hours pass, yet no one notices the stretching of time. Tea is refilled, biscuits disappear in polite increments, the fire crackles quietly in the hearth. You feel your pulse slow, then quicken again, following rhythms no one else perceives. Tremors rise and fall beneath your sleeves, each imperceptible movement a reminder of the liquid that rests in the cabinet behind you. Patient and expectant, the conversation continues, fragmented, polite, routine, and yet heavy, with a quiet recognition that binds the women together in silence. Finally, the calls end. Cups are drained. Chairs return to their usual positions. The last visitor pulls her shawl tighter and steps onto the street, leaving behind a room that smells faintly of tea, faintly of lavender, and faintly of the hidden remedies no one speaks of. You exhale slowly, your hands curling against the empty cup, the tremors settling just slightly. Alone, you glance toward the cabinet once more. The amber liquid sways faintly in the lamplight, unchanged, unwavering. The social calls may have blurred together, but the quiet truth remains. The remedies continue their silent work, hidden behind the veneer of civility, waiting for the night, waiting for the hands that cannot resist, waiting for the moments that cannot be explained. The cabinet sits in the corner of the parlor, dark wood gleaming faintly in the lamp's warm glow. You approach it slowly, each step measured, careful, as if the house itself might shift beneath your weight. The day has been long, blurred with visits and conversations, polite smiles and careful nods, each moment pulling you farther from the reality of what waits behind that closed door. Now, finally, the parlor is empty, the air heavy with the faint scent of tea and lavender, and the residual sweetness that lingers from past evening's indulgences. Your fingers brush the handle lightly. The tremors rise, subtle but insistent, crawling from your wrist into your elbow, a quiet warning. You steady yourself against the frame, hand pressed to the polished wood, and take a deep breath, trying to anchor the swaying rhythm of your body. The house is silent, truly silent, and it amplifies the sound of your heartbeat, each thump sharp against the quiet as though it were trying to speak a warning you cannot yet hear. The cabinet door opens with a soft creak. The shelves are lined in precise rows, bottles of various shapes and sizes catching the lamplight. Amber, green, clear glass. Some are tall, some short, some with etched labels, others plain. Each one carries the promise of calm, of warmth, of the illusion of control. You hover, fingers brushing lightly across the tops of the bottles, feeling the weight of each decision you have made, each quiet surrender, each trembling morning and night that led you here. You pick up one bottle. Amber liquid sloshes gently, catching the light, moving slowly like a living thing within the glass. The scent rises faintly, a sweetness that curls into your nose, smooth and almost comforting, but with an edge that leaves a chill in your chest. You inhale lightly, and the aroma brings back memories. The nights spent awake, the tremors that refused to leave, the moments when you thought the world might tilt too far for you to hold it. Steady. The bottle whispers to you, soft, patient, insistent. You place it back carefully. Another catches your eye. Smaller, darker, its label worn. You lift it, feeling the glass against your palms, the coolness grounding you even as the tremor travels through your fingers. The bottles do not judge, do not speak aloud, and yet in their silence they reveal all. They catalogue the nights you could not sleep, the days you could not rise fully awake, the tremors you hid from the world, the moments of surrender you told yourself were temporary. A shiver runs down your spine. You step back, your hand brushing against the velvet pouch tucked on the lower shelf. The small weight of it feels like a heartbeat beneath your fingertips. You know the contents, the amber liquid within, and the comfort it promises, a comfort that is both solace and snare. The bottles are patient witnesses, observing the cycles of need, the quiet descent that no one else sees, no one else acknowledges. You close the cabinet slowly. The amber glow fades as the door shuts. Silence returns to the parlor, deep, enveloping. Yet even in the quiet, you feel the presence of the bottles lingering, a soft murmur that stays in your chest, that threads through the tremor in your fingers, that reminds you that some comforts whisper too insistently, and some nights are too long for any light to reach. The bottles have spoken. You have listened, and still, the house waits. The sunlight has faded into a soft, muted glow that spills lazily through the windows, stretching across the parlor in pale amber streaks. You sit by the table, hands folded, the tremor in your fingers more subtle now, but present a quiet, insistent rhythm that refuses to be ignored. Outside, the streets are dim, coated in the grey hush that precedes evening, and the distant chiming of the church bell marks the slow passage of hours you cannot measure in certainty. The air carries the faint scent of soot and wood smoke, mingling with the sweet remnants of afternoon tea and the lingering perfume of lavender sachets tucked in drawers. You glance toward the cabinet in the corner, dark wood polished by years of care. Its shelves are lined with bottles, each a small vessel of comfort and quiet terror. Amber liquid sways gently in glass that catches the lamp's light. Green bottles glimmer faintly. Clear vials reveal the pale essence within. Each one holds a promise, a memory, a too's surrender. You trace your fingers along the smooth surface of one bottle, remembering the mornings it steadied your pulse, the nights it softened, the tremors that had once threatened to unravel you entirely. The room grows warmer as the fire's glow spreads across the floor, casting shadows that stretch and twist along the walls. You fold a handkerchief and then unfold it again, fingers catching briefly on the raised embroidery, a tactile reminder of small routines meant to anchor you in the world outside your mind. Yet, even as you perform these motions, your thoughts drift, to the social calls that blurred together, to the quiet observations of servants and neighbors, to the ledger that recorded the silent descent of women like you, to the velvet pouch hiding the amber liquid that had become more companion than remedy. The dusk settles deeper. Outside, a breeze stirs, ruffling leaves and rattling shutters in a rhythm that seems almost like a warning. You press your palms to the side table, feeling the pulse beneath your skin, feeling the echo of countless hours spent balancing civility and need. Every step you've taken today, every polite smile and measured word, has been a careful dance around the edges of disclosure, a performance performed under the watchful eyes of both friends and strangers alike. Your gaze drifts back to the bottles. The amber liquid glimmers faintly, almost sentient in the lamplight. You know its power, you know its comfort and its cost. A shiver rises through you, not entirely from cold, not entirely from the tremor, but from the knowledge that you have been walking this line for months, perhaps years, that each day has been shaped by the delicate interplay between necessity and dependency. The silence presses in as the light fades, the room holding its breath. You breathe slowly, deliberately, feeling the warmth in your chest that is partly the fire, partly the quiet acceptance of the day's rituals, partly the lingering trace of the remedy taken earlier. Shadows stretch longer, the evening growing heavier, but there is a rhythm to it, a cadence of twilight, a reminder that days end and nights begin, that the house waits, patient and silent, for whatever comes next. You sit back in your chair, hands resting gently on your lap, and allow the tremor to settle. Outside, the first faint stars appear, small points of light in the deepening grey. The day is over. The bottles remain, and the quiet of dusk envelops you completely, a soft, unyielding reminder of the hours lived in shadow and the delicate balance of light and necessity. The afternoon wanes, and the parlor sits in a quiet hush that feels heavier than usual. You move toward the writing desk, the tremor in your fingers, a subtle rhythm beneath the surface of your skin, reminding you of the hours spent holding the bottle, of the days when the remedy dictated the pace of your life. A stack of letters rests on the surface, envelopes unsealed, ink fading on the edges, half-formed sentences trailing off into nothingness. They are correspondence begun with intent but abandoned under the pressure of sleepless nights, nervous mornings, and the persistent, quiet pull of the amber liquid that has come to shape your days. You lift the top letter, tracing the curling lines of ink with a finger. The words are careful, precise, meant to convey civility and composure, but beneath the carefully chosen phrasing, the tremor in the pen smudges the letters slightly, evidence of the nervous energy that accompanies each attempt to communicate. The letter is addressed to a friend, someone who has always understood the subtle codes of respectability, someone who would not pry, who would not ask, but who might sense the quiet desperation behind the words. You exhale slowly, pressing your palm against the page, feeling the warmth of your hand against the cool ink. The second letter rests unfinished, the lines of ink breaking off mid-thought. A sentence begins, paused, trailing into silence. You remember the day it was written, the tremor in your hand, the shiver that ran from wrist to shoulder, the hesitation at each word. The letter was meant to describe simple events, ordinary experiences, but every word felt amplified, weighed down by the knowledge that you were hiding so much more. The remedy had been taken earlier that day, yet its effects were subtle enough to steady your pulse, not enough to steady your mind. You place the first letter aside and lift the second, holding it at arm's length. The script sways gently in your fingers, unsteady, despite the straight line of the desk beneath it. You feel the pull of memory, the quiet mornings spent writing, the afternoons of waiting, the nights when sleep eluded you entirely. Each letter is a record not only of communication but of absence, the absence of true rest, the absence of clarity, the absence of the self you once recognized. Outside, the wind brushes against the window pane, rattling the glass softly. a sound that carries into the room like a subtle reminder of the hours slipping by. You glance at the cabinet, at the bottles, at the velvet pouch that has accompanied you through months of careful concealment. They lie in wait, silent, patient, as if aware that the letters, too, are witnesses, fragments of time, evidence of your quiet descent. You sit back in your chair, letters scattered before you, feeling the weight of all the thoughts left unspoken. The tremor pulses through your hands again, small, insistent, a reminder of what has been lost to secrecy and habit. You fold the letters loosely, careful not to crease them further, placing them into a neat stack, a small attempt at order, a feeble gesture of control. The parlor is quiet. The lamp flickers gently, casting shadows that stretch across the room. Outside, the first hints of evening press against the sky, muted and grey. The letters remain on the desk, unfinished and unclaimed, a testament to the delicate tension between duty and desire, between the world that expects you to perform and the body that trembles under its own quiet, unacknowledged needs. The house feels different today. The air is lighter, almost too light, as though the weight that has clung to every room for months has lifted just enough to let a single breath move freely. You sit at the window, looking out onto the street below, and notice the details with a clarity that has been absent for far too long. The uneven cobblestones, the flutter of laundry hung by neighbors, the flicker of sunlight catching on distant rooftops. The tremor in your hands is diminished, subtle now, almost imperceptible. You flex your fingers experimentally, and they respond with precision you scarcely recognize. The mornings have shifted. The haze that used to settle immediately upon waking is thinner, receding faster, leaving a mind that can focus, recall, and observe without the constant pull of dependency. You notice the sensation keenly, the sharpness of the air in your lungs, the exact temperature of the room, the patterns of shadow across the carpet. It is unfamiliar and slightly disconcerting, this return of sensation, unmediated by the amber liquid that has guided your days for so long. You move through the house with measured steps, each one deliberate. The kitchen smells faintly of the stew simmering on the stove, faintly of lemon polish from the table, faintly of the faint smoke from the hearth. You open a drawer to retrieve a spoon, and are surprised by the clarity of memory. You remember every utensil's place, every routine, without hesitation. The rhythm of domestic life feels natural again, untangled from the blur of chemical comfort. Your gaze drifts to the cabinet where the bottles rest. You feel a strange tension, a combination of relief and fear as you approach. Each bottle gleams in the lamplight, unchanged, patient, immovable. You reach out, fingertips brushing the smooth glass of the vial you have carried in your palm through countless nights and trembling mornings. It is heavy with memory, but it no longer commands your attention. You realize you can choose to leave it untouched, and the thought alone fills you with a warmth that is not chemical. You sit at the parlor table, the velvet pouch in your lap, feeling the weight of months past, every tremor, every night of unrest, every careful step around visitors and servants, every half-written letter, and every whispered acknowledgement has been etched into your body and mind. But now, for the first time in an eternity, you feel the possibility of control returning. The clarity is quiet, unassuming, almost fragile, and you know it must be nurtured with care. Outside, the world continues unabated, indifferent to your internal shift. Children play in the street, carriages rattle past, and the distant bells chime once, then twice, marking time in a rhythm that no longer feels oppressive. You breathe deeply, noticing the pattern, the sequence, the regularity. You feel your pulse settle beneath your fingertips, steadying with each inhale and exhale. The day stretches before you, unbroken, full of tasks and observations that you can now attend to without hesitation or distraction. You rise from the chair, spine straight, mind alert, hands steady. The bottles remain in the cabinet, untouched, awaiting choice. You step into the corridor, aware of the soft echoes beneath your feet, and for the first time in countless days, you feel fully present, aware of the body, the mind, the world, and the quiet clarity that has returned to claim its place. The day has grown long, the light outside waning into a pale grey that seeps through the windows and softens the edges of the parlour. You sit quietly at the table, hands folded in your lap, watching the shadows stretch across the floorboards. The tremor in your fingers is faint now, a subtle echo of the months past, but it reminds you persistently of everything that has led to this moment. You feel the weight of the remedy, the velvet pouch tucked safely in the cabinet, and the knowledge that the world outside the glass is unchanged, indifferent to the quiet struggles that shape each house and each body within. A notice has arrived from the chemist this morning, sealed with the official stamp of the city. You had read it once quickly, scanning for the familiar instructions and the polite assurances, but today you return to it with deliberate care. The words are formal, precise, unyielding. Regulations, limitations, rules for dispensing the remedies that have become both lifeline and shackle. The law acknowledges the necessity and the danger, the dual nature of what was once merely a tonic. It does not forgive, does not offer grace. It only prescribes, measures, controls. You trace the edges of the paper with your fingertips, feeling the texture of the parchment, the faint embossing of the seal. The notice feels heavier than its weight, laden with implications. Your thoughts drift back through the months to trembling mornings before dawn, to afternoons of careful folding and measured conversation, to nights when the remedy soothed both body and mind, and to the subtle, unspoken ways you and every other woman of the household navigated the world under its influence. The law is a recognition of that history, a mirror reflecting the collective need, the quiet descent, the patterns that were once invisible to all but those who experienced them. You rise and move toward the cabinet, your fingers brushing over the rows of bottles with a reverence born of routine and necessity. Each glass vessel reflects the dim lamplight, amber and green and clear, catching fragments of your gaze. You pause on the small vial you have carried longest, weighing the choice of whether to take it or leave it. The notice lies open beside the cabinet, a reminder of both oversight and consequence. It makes the act heavier, more deliberate, yet also clearer. The boundaries are defined, the parameters established, the responsibilities unmistakable. Outside, the wind presses against the window pane, carrying the faint scent of winter cold. You hear the distant clatter of carriages, the soft murmur of voices along the street. The house feels still, patient, awaiting your decision. You inhale slowly, feeling your pulse settle into a rhythm that aligns, however faintly, with the cadence of the room. The tremor beneath your sleeves persists, yet it no longer commands your attention. It only reminds you that vigilance and care must accompany every action. You sit once more at the table, placing the notice carefully beside the empty teacup from earlier. The bottles remain in the cabinet, silent witnesses to the months past and the law that now governs the future. You feel a cautious sense of clarity, the faint promise that the rules, while strict, offer a structure within which you may regain control, a framework that both limits and protects. The day fades outside, and you settle into the quiet rhythm of the house, aware of your choices, your body, your mind, and the unspoken understanding that tomorrow will demand the same vigilance and care. The morning arrives with a softness that feels almost unfamiliar. Light drifts lazily through the curtains, painting the parlor in muted gold and grey. The house exhales gently, the shadows retreating from corners that had held months of quiet tension. You move through the room slowly, hands trailing along polished surfaces, noticing the subtle creaks of the floorboards beneath your feet, the way the air shifts as doors open and close. Each step feels deliberate, measured, as though reclaiming space that had once seemed to belong to tremors and secrets. You pause by the window, gazing out at the street below. Children run past, their laughter sharp and bright, piercing the quiet in a way that is startling and almost alien. Carriages rattle across the cobblestones, horses' hooves striking a rhythm you had forgotten existed in its simplicity. For the first time in months, you notice the details, the texture of the paving stones, the angles of rooftops against the pale morning sky, the way sunlight catches a silver handle on a distant door. The world feels solid again, tangible in ways it has not been since the first tremor, the first dose, the first evening when sleep had eluded you entirely. The cabinet remains in its corner, the bottles lined in neat rows. You approach it with a sense of calm you haven't felt before, fingers brushing the smooth surfaces without hesitation or fear. The amber liquid in the vial catches the morning light, reflecting it softly into the room. But you no longer feel compelled to reach for it immediately. The tremor that once demanded its comfort now rests quietly in your fingertips, acknowledged but contained. You can choose to leave the bottles untouched, and in that choice there is a small, precious freedom. You run your hand along the edges of the table, straighten the chairs, smooth the folds of the curtains, and feel a faint sense of rhythm returning to the house. It seems to respond to your movements, a gentle creak. Here, a soft sigh of wood there, as though the rooms themselves are breathing again, in harmony with your steadied pulse. The parlor smells faintly of lavender and dust, of wood polished by careful hands, and you inhale deeply, savoring the ordinary scents that once felt lost beneath the haze of the remedy and the tremors. You pick up a teacup left from yesterday's quiet breakfast, the porcelain warm from sitting in sunlight. The motion is fluid, steady, free of hesitation, and you realize that for the first time in months, the smallest tasks carry neither dread nor anxiety. You notice the rhythm of your own body, the even rise and fall of your chest, the warmth in your fingers, the steadiness of your hands. The house, like you, has adjusted to a new tempo. Outside, the street continues, indifferent and alive. Windows reflect the morning, lamps catch the glint of sun, and the city hums its persistent life. Within, the house holds a quiet order, a rhythm unbroken by tremor or necessity. The bottles, the velvet pouch, the lingering memories of need remain, but they no longer dominate the space. You breathe fully, the calm settling into your bones, a quiet certainty that this house, like yourself, can endure and breathe again. The day stretches ahead, full of ordinary tasks and gentle rhythms. You rise from your chair, aware of each step, each movement, each breath. The house exhales alongside you, steady, patient, alive, and for the first time in a long while, you feel entirely present, free to move, to act, to simply exist in the quiet, reclaimed space that is finally yours once more. The evening stretches long and still, settling across the city like a grey, velvety shroud. You sit alone in the parlor, lamplight casting soft halos against the walls, highlighting the dust motes that drift lazily in the air. The house, now quiet in a way that feels earned rather than imposed, seems to lean toward you, breathing in rhythm with your own steady pulse. Months of tremors, sleepless nights, whispered secrets, and carefully measured remedies have left their imprint here on the walls, on the furniture, on the very air you inhale. And yet, now, at last, there is clarity, a fragile, luminous clarity that spreads like dawn over the remnants of shadows. You gaze at the cabinet in the corner, the bottles standing in their rows like silent witnesses to the history no one outside these walls will ever fully understand. Amber liquid catches the lamplight, green and clear glass glimmering faintly. Each vessel carries a story, a memory, a necessity that has been carefully concealed beneath the veil of respectability. You run your hand along the smooth surface of one, tracing the weight, the familiarity, the quiet pull it has had over your days and nights. You inhale lightly, the faint sweetness lingering at the edges of your senses, a reminder of the evenings spent in warmth, comfort, and quiet surrender. Outside, the streets are subdued, the distant clatter of carriages and muted voices fading into the growing darkness. The city moves as it always does, oblivious to the hidden struggles that shaped countless households. And yet, within these walls, you sense the history of an entire social order, a network of women whose lives have been quietly governed by necessity, by expectation, and by the soft, insistent pull of remedies that promised relief and exacted a toll. Each letter left unfinished, each tremor concealed, each social call navigated with careful poise contributes to a tapestry of secrecy woven across Victorian England. You rise from your expertise chair and move slowly toward the writing desk, where unopened letters and carefully folded notes lie in quiet repose. You touch one lightly, feeling the texture of the paper, the indentations of ink left by trembling fingers. You remember the afternoons spent drafting correspondence that never fully conveyed the truth, nights where your body ached for a remedy, mornings when the tremor persisted despite the careful rituals that shaped your existence. Each action, each hesitation, each carefully measured dose has been a part of this hidden history, a history that, though unseen, is no less real. Sitting once more, you press your palms against the table, letting the warmth of the lamp flow into your fingertips. You breathe deeply, noting the steadiness of your chest, the calm returning to your limbs. The velvet pouch and the amber vial rest in the cabinet, patient and unchanged, but they no longer dominate your awareness. You have learned to navigate the house, the day, and your own body without being wholly guided by them. The past lingers like a shadow, but the house itself seems to exhale, holding the quiet of generations who came before and of the moments that followed. The remedy, the secrecy, the trembling, all of it remains, catalogued in memory, in furniture, in the air. But now, you can move freely within it, aware of the history and yet not imprisoned by it. Victorian England buried its secrets carefully, in cabinets, in letters, in the delicate cadence of polite life. And within these walls, you have witnessed them, understood them, and finally, quietly, almost imperceptibly reclaimed your own presence amidst them. The room is still, deeper than silence should allow. The curtains have been drawn against the night, though a faint shimmer of lamplight filters through the edges, casting the walls in a soft, uncertain glow. You stand at the cradle, hands resting lightly on its edge, feeling the familiar tremor beneath your fingers, a quiet rhythm that has followed you for months, a whisper of the remedy's absence. The child sleeps, her tiny chest rising and falling in slow, unsteady breaths. And for a moment you think you can hear the very pulse of the house itself. It begins subtly, a shift of the covers, a faint exhalation that does not match the usual pattern. You lean closer, eyes narrowing, breath held, and feel the hair on your arms prickling. The warmth in your palms does not extend to your heart. There is a hollowness that runs through the room, a quiet tension that makes even the familiar furniture seem sharp at the edges. The child stirs, but not in the way she has before her. Small body lies unnaturally still, the flutter of an eyelid too faint to mark a true waking. You kneel beside the cradle, trembling despite the deliberate steadiness you have cultivated. Your hand hovers over her tiny chest, uncertain, fearful, knowing without understanding how much has changed in this small, fragile form. The night stretches into itself, heavy and relentless, every second a measure of suspense that presses against your chest. You whisper her name, softly, over and over, trying to coax a response from her stillness, trying to anchor yourself to something alive in a room that feels suspended between worlds. Minutes pass like hours. Each exhale is a tentative hope, each heartbeat a subtle terror. You lift her hand gently, feeling the cold weight of it against your own, and your own pulse accelerates in recognition that something is wrong, yet you cannot fully name it. You remember all the nights that preceded this one, the remedy administered carefully, measured, and yet relied upon so completely that the absence of it is nearly unthinkable. Each drop had been a small reassurance, a promise of quiet, a temporary reprieve, and now the silence is absolute. You rise shakily and move to the cabinet where the bottles are kept, running your fingers along the rows of amber and green and clear glass. The remedy rests inside the velvet pouch, patient and expectant, yet impotent against the finality that has crept into the room. You retrieve a small vial, careful, deliberate, but the tremor in your hands betrays both the urgency and the dread you feel. Every moment feels stretched thin, the gap between life and absence narrower than ever before. Returning to the cradle, you administer a drop, then another, but the effect is slower, weaker than any previous night. The child's chest rises once, twice, then stills again. You feel your breath catching, body shivering, mind unraveling into fragments of panic and guilt. Tears gather unbidden as the realization presses down. The remedy cannot restore what is slipping from her tiny grasp. Hours pass in quiet desperation, hands pressed against the still warmth of a body that does not respond as it once did. Morning will come eventually. The house will wake, the lamps will flicker, the streets will echo with ordinary sounds. But this night, this hour is one that lingers, immutable, marking a shift that even careful hands and measured doses cannot reverse. You kneel once more beside her, whispering softly, repeating every prayer and promise you know, feeling the tremor in your own heart echo in her chest, and realizing that some nights cannot be soothed, no matter the remedy, no matter the vigilance. The morning air in the house feels sharper than usual, carrying a chill that creeps beneath the sleeves of your gown and settles along your spine. You move slowly, deliberately, down the hall to the study, hands trembling slightly despite the warmth of the fire burning low in the hearth. Today is different. The letters have been set aside. The cabinet remains closed, the bottles resting quietly in their velvet pouch. There is a tension in the air that is both unfamiliar and inevitable, a sense that the hidden truths that have been whispered behind closed doors are about to be spoken aloud. The doctor arrives shortly after midday, his steps precise and measured, echoing softly against the polished floorboards. He carries himself with the quiet authority of someone who has spent years observing the fragile human body, reading not only the signs of physical ailment but the tremors and hesitations of the mind. You meet him in the study, seated across from the small desk that bears the weight of ink-stained ledgers, half-written letters, and the faint residue of remedies used in quiet desperation. His eyes, steady and unblinking, meet yours immediately, and there is a weight in his gaze that presses into your chest. "Good morning," he says softly, though the words carry more gravity than they should. "I've come to speak plainly today." You nod, heart fluttering, the tremor in your fingers quickening despite your best efforts to remain composed. You've heard these words before: indirect advice, careful suggestions, gentle warnings, but never this. Never with clarity that cannot be misinterpreted. "The remedies you have been using," he begins, voice calm but unwavering, "were intended to ease minor discomforts, to quiet nerves and calm sleepless nights. They were never meant to form the foundation of your daily existence." You shift in your seat, the words sinking slowly, carrying with them a weight you've long avoided acknowledging. The trembling in your hands spreads now, subtle but insistent, a reminder of nights and mornings spent under the quiet influence of amber liquid. You glance at the cabinet in the corner, imagining the bottles inside, their presence now a tangible symbol of reliance and quiet surrender. "The cure," the doctor continues, "has become the disease." The sentence lands heavily, each word echoing through the room. You close your eyes briefly, trying to steady your breathing. You had known, deep down, that dependency had grown within the comfort you once sought in the remedy. But hearing it spoken plainly, acknowledged without hesitation, fractures the calm you've clung to for so long. He leans forward slightly, placing his hands on the desk between you. The tremors, the restless nights, the reliance upon a substance, meant only to soothe temporarily, these are signs. They are evidence that the balance has been lost. You must face the consequences if you are to reclaim yourself. You nod again, though words fail you. The quiet authority of his tone leaves no room for denial. He rises, gathering his coat, and offers a final glance, a mixture of concern and expectation. Seek recovery carefully, slowly, with awareness. You cannot undo what has happened, but you can begin to navigate what remains. The room feels heavier after he leaves, though the fire continues to crackle in gentle protest. You move toward the cabinet, fingers hovering over the bottles, now symbols of both comfort and peril. The trembling in your hands softens slightly, replaced by a hollow awareness of what the doctor has spoken. Plainly, the cure has indeed become the disease, and the house, the children, and you yourself are caught within the quiet aftermath. The late afternoon light stretches thin across the parlor, soft and pale, casting long shadows that seem to lean in closer with every passing moment. You stand near the window, hands pressed lightly to the sill, fingers trembling just enough to betray the calm you try to project. The house is quiet, unnervingly so, the sort of silence that waits, patient and expectant, for something to break it. Today, that stillness will be tested. He enters without knocking. His footsteps are deliberate, heavy against the floorboards, a rhythm that carries the weight of exhaustion and a tension you have felt before but never so sharply. The tremor in your hands increases as you turn to meet him. He is calm, measured, yet there is an intensity in his eyes, a focus sharpened by fear and love, and the weight of responsibility. "We need to speak," he says, voice steady, but with an edge that presses into the air between you. There is no preamble, no polite cushioning, just the words, stark and unyielding. You nod, hands folding instinctively in front of you, attempting to steady the tremor that has persisted through too many nights and too many doses. He approaches the table, resting his palms lightly upon the surface. His gaze falls to the cabinet in the corner, where the bottles sit in silent, waiting rows. You do not move. You cannot. The trembling spreads up your arms, a subtle quake that mirrors the tension in your chest. "You cannot continue like this," he says quietly, but the words strike like stone. "Not for yourself, not for the children, not for this house." You swallow, throat tight. The tremor seems to pulse in time with your heartbeat. He reaches for your hand, his fingers firm yet gentle. "I've tried to understand, to be patient, to see this as just a habit, a momentary weakness," he continues. "But it has become more than that. It is shaping everything, our days, our nights, our very home." You nod again, unable to speak, your breath catching in the chest. The tremor intensifies, and for a moment, it feels as though the air itself is shaking in sympathy. You think of the nights you could not sleep, the letters you never finished, the afternoons that blurred into one another beneath the pull of amber, liquid and velvet pouches. You think of the children, careful, quiet, learning to tiptoe through the house as though every step might awaken a fragile truth. "I cannot watch you do this anymore," he says, voice breaking just slightly. "It is not only your life, it is ours. You must choose the remedy or your family, the secrecy or the safety of this home. You cannot have both." The weight of his words settles into the room, pressing against the walls, sinking into your chest, mingling with the tremor that runs through your fingers. For a moment, you feel the pull of panic, the urge to flee to the cabinet, to lift the vial, to seek the calm it has always promised. But under that instinct, there is something else, a fragile clarity, the recognition of the choice before you. He releases your hand, giving a small nod, and steps back. The silence that follows is heavier than the words themselves. Outside, the wind rustles against the window pane, carrying the distant clatter of carriage wheels. You breathe slowly, aware that the house waits, the children wait, and that you finally are being asked to decide what matters most. The parlor feels impossibly still, the kind of stillness that presses against your chest and fills every corner of the room. The lamps cast a soft glow, illuminating the dust suspended in the air like tiny, slow-moving stars. You sit in the armchair, hands folded in your lap, tremors faint but insistent, and you feel the weight of every month that has passed, the quiet mornings, the restless nights, the carefully measured doses, the letters left unfinished, the secrets tucked away behind curtains and cabinets. He sits across from you, eyes steady but expectant, waiting not for an excuse, not for a deflection, but for the truth that has been lurking beneath the surface for too long. You take a deep, deliberate breath, feeling the tremor ripple once more through your fingers, and begin to speak. I don't know where to begin, you whisper, voice small, fragile, almost swallowed by the heavy air. I've tried to manage it, to hide it, to make it part of the day, without letting it take over. But it has controlled too much. The mornings, the nights, the house, even my own mind. You pause, letting the words hang, tremble, and then continue. Each sentence, a careful step along a path you never intended to walk. I've been using the remedy for months, more than I should, more than I realized. I told myself it was only for sleep, only for nerves, only until the shaking would pass. But it never passed. I became dependent, and I was afraid to admit it. Afraid of what it would mean if anyone knew, afraid of losing control. The tremor in your hands intensifies as the confession continues, small shivers moving up your arms, a physical echo of the relief and fear coiled in your chest. The room feels smaller, the walls pressing in, the air thick with the weight of unspoken truths finally given voice. You glance toward the cabinet, the bottles now a silent chorus to the admission, and you feel the sharp, hollow echo of guilt and relief intertwined. I hid it from the children, you say, voice catching. I hid it from friends. I hid it from you. Every day, every hour, I tried to maintain appearances, to appear calm, composed, respectable. But I've failed, and I can't continue this way without help. He leans forward slightly, resting his hands on his knees, silent but fully present. You watch his face, reading the lines of concern, the shadow of hurt softened by understanding, and it strengthens you, allowing the words to continue. I am ready to stop if you will help me. I can't do this alone anymore. The confession hangs in the air, heavy, tangible. The house exhales alongside you, the quiet settling around the two of you, acknowledging the truth that has finally been spoken. The tremor begins to fade, just slightly, replaced by a cautious steadiness, as though the act of naming the secret has loosened its hold. The parlor is quiet now, filled with the soft understanding that grows in the space between truth and acceptance. You sit back in your chair, feeling the weight of months lift incrementally, aware that this is only the beginning of the journey, but for the first time, you are not walking it alone. The morning is pale and biting, the sunlight diffused through clouds that hang low over the rooftops. You rise slowly, hands pressed against the edge of the bed, trembling beneath the weight of the hours that stretch before you. Sleep has fled completely, replaced by the persistent ache in your chest and the ghost of tremors that ripple through your limbs. The house feels colder than usual, the fire in the hearth offering warmth only to your fingertips while the chill seeps into your bones. Each movement is deliberate, each step measured against the uncertainty that coils beneath your skin. You approach the parlor, the velvet pouch and the amber bottles resting quietly in the cabinet's shadow, their presence now a reminder of what you must endure. Today begins the long winter of withdrawal, the process that has been looming for months but now arrives with relentless insistence. You reach for the armchair, settling into its familiar contours, feeling the tremor ripple beneath your hands as if it has become a separate entity, alive and impatient. Minutes stretch into hours. Each breath comes shallow, uneven, as your body protests the absence of the remedy that has shaped your days for so long. Your hands shake more visibly now, fingers curling and uncurling in a rhythm you cannot control. Even simple actions, lifting a cup, brushing your hair, folding a cloth, demand conscious effort, each motion accompanied by the whisper of panic beneath the surface. The house seems to lean closer, the walls silent observers to the slow, methodical unraveling of the body that has depended on relief for so long. The child's room is quiet, the crib empty, the faint scent of syrup lingering like a memory you cannot forget. You imagine the weeks ahead, nights spent awake, hours crawling past, each minute a battle to reclaim autonomy from a substance that has shaped not only your body, but your routines, your thoughts, and your very perception of time. Even the smallest tasks require courage: pouring water, stirring tea, walking across the floorboards without losing balance or composure. The tremor is constant, a soft but insistent reminder of what has been lost and what must be regained. You close your eyes, pressing your palms against your face, and feel the slow burn of withdrawal ripple through your muscles. Sweat forms at the base of your neck, and your heart pounds erratically against your ribs, both warning and echo of the internal struggle. You repeat small mantras under your breath, the cadence of words offering a fragile anchor in the storm of sensations, tremors, chills, exhaustion, nausea, and the quiet ache of dependency that has taken root over months of quiet submission. Hours pass, the day stretching thin. The parlor lamp flickers against the walls, casting shadows that seem to dance in sympathy with your trembling. You rise slowly, hands shaking, and move to the cabinet. The bottles glimmer faintly, silent witnesses to both past, reliance, and the present challenge. You do not reach for them. The choice not to do so is a small victory, one measured in tremors and breath and the faint return of clarity that begins to seep through the haze. The long winter of withdrawal has begun. Each hour is a battle, each breath a reclaiming of yourself. The house waits, patient and quiet, and you face it trembling, fearful, and slowly, deliberately, determined to endure. The morning sunlight falls weakly across the desk, highlighting the edges of scattered letters and envelopes left undone. You sit in the armchair, shoulders hunched, fingers hovering over paper that has remained untouched for hours, days, perhaps weeks. Each sheet carries the weight of intentions, never fully realized, greetings half written, apologies never sent, confessions left to dissolve into silence. The tremor in your hands refuses to yield completely, subtle but insistent, reminding you that the remedy is no longer there to soften the edges of reality. You pick up the top letter. The ink is slightly smudged where your fingers have brushed it in haste, a testament to the hands that wrote it trembling in search of composure. It is addressed to a friend, someone who would have understood the ordinary troubles of daily life, not the extraordinary turmoil hidden beneath the polite words. You trace the letters with your fingertip, feeling the raised texture of the ink, the 12-over unevenness that speaks of nerves fraying and nights spent restless in anticipation of the next dose. Another letter lies beneath it, folded once, then twice, left in a neat stack but unfinished. You remember the day it was begun, the sun slanting through the window, the house quiet, the children absorbed in their play, and your own hands struggling to maintain the delicate rhythm of handwriting that has grown foreign to you. Each line is an effort, a balance between expressing thought and concealing the tremors beneath your skin, between honesty and the polite artifice demanded by the world outside. You lift the second letter carefully. A single page curls at the corner, ink faded slightly. You can almost see the pulse of your hand in the strokes, the tiny deviations that betray the internal struggle between dependency and the desire to maintain appearances. You inhale slowly, the scent of paper and faint lavender mingling in the air. Your mind drifts, not to the words themselves, but to the invisible chain that has tied them together, nights of waking, mornings of trembling, afternoons blurred by the subtle haze of amber liquid that was always within reach, but never acknowledged openly. The letters seem almost to breathe with the weight of secrecy. Each one is a record not only of communication left incomplete, but of lives subtly reshaped by the hidden presence of the remedy. You run your hands over the stack again, feeling the slight ridges where ink has pressed into the paper, where thoughts were formed and abandoned, where confessions remained unspoken. The tremor beneath your fingertips feels more pronounced now, a physical echo of the internal rhythm of reliance that has been part of your days for too long. Outside, the wind presses against the window pane, rattling softly, carrying the faint, distant sounds of the street. You imagine other letters, other households, other women quietly leaving words unfinished as their own hands shook, as their own minds and bodies conformed to the subtle pull of necessity and habit. The room is silent except for your own breathing, slow and deliberate, as you fold the letters gently, stacking them carefully once more. They remain unfinished, unclaimed, waiting, and within their quiet presence lies a testament to the cost of secrecy, the weight of dependency, and the fragile, trembling path toward reclaiming clarity. The morning light slips slowly through the curtains, pale and diffused, softening the edges of the parlor and carrying with it a stillness unlike any you have known in months. You sit at the small table, hands folded lightly in your lap, and feel the tremor beneath your fingers faint now, almost imperceptible, a quiet echo of the relentless rhythm that once governed your days. The house breathes around you, patient and calm, the air free of the usual tension that had settled into every corner and crevice. You lift your gaze to the window. Outside, the street is alive with ordinary motion, children running, carriages rattling, merchants calling softly to one another. The details register with startling clarity, cobblestones uneven but tangible, rooftops sharp against the pale sky, sunlight catching metal and glass in precise patterns. For the first time in months, your mind observes without the haze of dependency clouding perception, without the pull of the remedy shaping the air, rhythm of your awareness. The cabinet in the corner is still, the bottles resting neatly in their velvet pouch, patient and waiting. You approach it slowly, fingers tracing the smooth wood of the frame without hesitation or fear. The amber liquid in the vial glimmers faintly in the morning light, but it no longer commands you. The choice to leave it untouched is yours entirely, and the freedom that comes with that choice, subtle, delicate, but unmistakable, fills the room with a quiet warmth that has nothing to do with chemical relief. You move through the house deliberately, noting the details that had previously escaped notice. The pattern of shadows across the floor, the texture of fabrics, the faint creak of floorboards as they respond to weight. Even simple tasks, straightening the cushions, arranging flowers, folding linens, feel natural again, performed without the haze of necessity or the weight of fear. The tremor persists faintly but does not dominate. It is acknowledged, controlled, and gradually fading into the background of steadied awareness. You sit again at the table, a stack of letters before you, unfinished but no longer oppressive. The weight of months of secrecy and careful concealment has been lifted, replaced by the quiet certainty that clarity has returned. Each breath you take is full and deliberate, each motion measured but fluid, each thought coherent and free from the distortion that once colored perception. The house seems to breathe with you, the rooms aligned with the rhythm of a mind returning to its natural cadence. Outside, the city continues unabated, indifferent to your private reclamation. Yet within these walls, the quiet is profound, marked by a sense of regained autonomy. The bottles remain untouched, the velvet pouch rests in its place, and the room is filled with the subtle reassurance of choice that the days ahead can be navigated without surrender, without fear, without the dependency that once ruled your hours. You rise from the chair, hands steady, body aligned, and move slowly toward the window. Light and shadow play across your features, highlighting the return of presence, the reclamation of self, and the gentle, almost imperceptible triumph of quiet clarity that, at last, has returned to claim its place in the house and in you. The morning air is crisp, carrying the faint tang of winter chill through the open windows, and the house feels quieter than it has in months. You sit at the parlor table, hands resting lightly on the polished wood, tremors faint but present, a persistent reminder of the life you have been navigating beneath layers of dependency and secrecy. Today, however, the atmosphere feels different, heavier with consequence, tempered by clarity. The notice from the chemist rests before you, the edges of the parchment curling slightly with age and handling, the stamp, embossed and official, declaring regulations that were once distant but now arrive squarely at your door. You read the words carefully, deliberately. The notice acknowledges the widespread use of remedies, the subtle but insidious dependency that has shaped households, and the need for regulation. It does not scold, nor does it forgive. It simply outlines limits, responsibilities, and oversight, a framework imposed by authority, meant to preserve both safety and order. You trace the letters with a fingertip, the texture of the ink, the indentations from presses long past, carrying the weight of months of tremors, sleepless nights, and carefully measured doses that once governed your days. The bottles in the cabinet, amber and green, clear and unmarked, gleam softly in the lamplight, their presence as silent and expectant as ever. You move toward them with hands steady but conscious of the lingering tremor beneath your sleeves. Each vial is a relic, a reminder of mornings guided by nervous hands, of nights softened by measured indulgence, of a routine built on secrecy. Now, with the chemist's law in force, their authority has shifted, no longer only yours to negotiate, but constrained by a society finally acknowledging the scope of its reach. You lift one bottle, feeling its cool weight in your palm. Its amber liquid sloshes slowly, reflecting the morning light. It is familiar, comforting, yet now it carries a sense of accountability. The law imposes boundaries, and with boundaries comes choice, small, deliberate, and deliberate. You do not feel compelled to reach for it immediately. The tremor beneath your fingertips is a whisper, not a demand. Outside, the streets hum with the ordinary rhythm of life. Carriages roll across the cobblestones, merchants call softly from their stalls, and the distant chime of church bells punctuates the morning air. The world moves without regard for the struggle contained within these walls. Yet the structure imposed by the chemist's law creates a fragile framework within which recovery can begin. It is a path marked by vigilance, awareness, and care, demanding deliberate action with each choice, each breath, each movement. You sit again at the table, placing the bottle back in its velvet pouch. The notice lies beside it, an anchor of structure in the midst of lingering dependency. Tremors continue, faint but steady, and you feel a cautious clarity, a recognition that the house, the remedy, and the law together now define a landscape within which you may begin to reclaim control. The day stretches ahead, long, deliberate, and demanding, but within it lies a fragile promise that the remedies, the rules, and the quiet vigilance can coexist to form a path toward steadiness, toward clarity, and toward the reclamation of yourself. The morning is gentle, pale sunlight spilling across the parlor in soft golden streams, brushing against the furniture with a warmth that feels almost foreign after months of tension and tremor. You move through the house slowly, deliberately, hands brushing the polished surfaces, fingers tracing the familiar grooves and edges as though rediscovering a place that has always been yours. Each step carries a quiet certainty, the tremor in your hands softened, subdued, almost insignificant, a faint echo of the life that once bent to the amber liquid's pull. The air smells faintly of lavender and polished wood, the subtle scent of yesterday's tea lingering like a memory. You pause by the window, watching the street below. Children run across the cobblestones, their laughter sharp and clear. Carriages rattle with purpose, and the distant bells mark the hours with a rhythm that no longer feels oppressive. Each detail registers, precise, tangible, confirming the clarity that has returned to your senses. The house breathes with you, its walls and floors are tuned to the steadier cadence of your body. You approach the cabinet in the corner, the bottles resting quietly in their velvet pouch. Amber, green, and clear glass catch the morning light, reflecting softly across the room. For months, these vessels dictated the rhythm of your existence, their presence an invisible tether, guiding tremors and stabilizing nights. Today, however, you reach for none of them. The choice not to do so is a subtle triumph, a quiet reclamation of agency, as the tremor beneath your sleeves diminishes with each deliberate breath. The parlor feels alive in a way it has not for ages. The cushions are straightened, the flowers arranged precisely, and the curtains swayed gently with a breeze that drifts through the open window. Even the air itself seems lighter, carrying not only warmth but a sense of recovery. You notice each sound with clarity: the soft scratch of a quill from the 18 writing desk, the faint crackle of the fire in the hearth, the whisper of wind through the shutters. Each is distinct, unclouded, marking the return of perception previously dulled by reliance on the remedy. You move to the desk, brushing aside letters left unfinished for weeks. The papers lie neatly now, but you no longer feel the compulsion to hide or avoid them. With steady hands, you open a folded note, tracing the inked lines with deliberate care. Your thoughts move with them, no longer fogged or jittering, and you realize that for the first time in months, you can engage with the world as it is unmediated, unblurred, and entirely present. The cabinet remains untouched, the velvet pouch lying dormant. You walk slowly through the rooms, noting each detail as if seeing it for the first time. The gentle sway of curtains, the polished reflection on the mantel, the muted tick of the parlor clock. The house, once heavy with the invisible weight of dependency, now moves with a quiet rhythm, alive in its steadiness, breathing again in harmony with you. You stand by the window once more, watching sunlight settle across the street, shadows stretching long and gentle. The world continues beyond these walls, indifferent, persistent, alive, but inside, within the reclaimed space of rooms that once carried tremors and secrets, there is clarity, warmth, and a fragile, undeniable peace. The house breathes again, steady, patient, and whole, and so do you. The evening drapes itself over the house like a quiet, dense cloak. The lamplight flickers softly against the walls, casting shadows that stretch and twist, lingering in corners that once held tremors, whispers, and the subtle scent of remedies long relied upon. You sit in the parlor, hands resting lightly on the polished table, feeling the faint echo of the tremor beneath your skin almost gone, subdued by months of vigilance, withdrawal, and quiet recovery. The house exhales around you, patient and still, and for the first time, the weight of secrecy feels tangible but no longer oppressive. You think of the generations before you, of women who walked similar paths, each day navigating civility while concealing the tremors, the sleepless nights, the carefully measured doses that shaped households without leaving evidence beyond faint glass residue and half-whispered glances. Victorian England thrived on appearances and the proper facade of home, etiquette, and domestic order masked a hidden epidemic, one that flowed quietly through parlors, kitchens, and bedrooms alike. The remedy, small amber vials hidden in velvet pouches, soothed the nerves and masked the tremors, yet it also bound women to dependency that no one acknowledged openly. The cabinet in the corner holds the remnants of this history. Bottles gleam softly in the lamp's glow, each a silent witness to hours passed in shadowed stillness, nights spent pacing, nights spent tiptoeing around children and servants, afternoons blurred by polite conversation and hidden relief. You approach it slowly, fingertips brushing the polished wood, tracing the familiar edges of glass and velvet. The amber liquid sways faintly, patient, as though waiting for confession or recognition. Today, you recognize it without fear, without compulsion. You can leave it untouched, a symbol of the past rather than a necessity of the present. Outside, the city moves on, indifferent to the secrets buried within these walls. The distant clang of carriage wheels on cobblestones, the faint murmur of voices from neighbors' windows, and the occasional toll of the church bell remind you that life continues beyond your observation, beyond the reach of trembling hands and carefully measured doses. Inside, however, the air is thick with memory, the half-finished letters, the secret social calls, the tremors that once ruled days and nights, all woven into a tapestry of lived experience that the proper facade of Victorian life never admitted. You sit back in the armchair, watching the shadows stretch and soften, and reflect on the cost of concealment. The remedy, once a tool of comfort, now lies dormant, its power diminished by time, clarity, and careful awareness. The house, which had once seemed heavy with the weight of hidden dependence, now breathes freely, and in its rhythm, you sense a fragile liberation. Yet even in this quiet, the echoes of secrecy remain, lingering like dust motes in the lamplight whispers of generations past, reminders that propriety often masks deeper truths, that appearances hold power over perception, and that even the most proper households carried shadows too subtle to confront openly. The day fades fully, leaving only the soft glow of the lamp and the quiet heartbeat of the house. Victorian England buried its secrets carefully, in cabinets, letters, and polite smiles, but within these walls you have witnessed them, understood them, and finally with trembling hands, measured breath, and reclaimed clarity, acknowledged their presence. The house exhales one last time, steady, patient, and whole, carrying the memory of what it hid and the relief of what has finally been faced.